Hello, everybody. Hello, Facebook, and hello, YouTube. So, for those who may have just happened upon me and not know where you are, if you're on YouTube, this is Sew Your Bag, and my name is Catherine. If you're on Facebook, you're in my private group, so you should be able to see what the YouTube users see, and you know my name already. My name is Catherine. Tonight, what we're going to be working on, and I'm just double checking here to make sure that my connections are all there and everything's broadcasting correctly. For those of you who are on Facebook, who are on YouTube, please feel free to ask questions if you happen to be lost for any reason. Um, Honestly, you may have just happened upon me and therefore you're not quite sure what's going on here. But today we're going to be going over, or we're going to start our 3-day sew along with the Akoma Mini-Messenger bag. Sew along with you can see it's working. I can actually see your questions. So as you pop them up, I'll be able to see them. So the 3-day sew along is going to be in the 3 different parts are going to be tonight. We're going to be working on the cutting and interfacing. And normally in the group, I will go through it and I will cut everything out and get as far as I can to leave people in a good place. But because I'm on YouTube tonight, I'm just going to do like a little bit of an abbreviated version just to make sure that everybody who has the pattern knows where to go for tomorrow night. But we're going to be talking about interfacing the pieces. We're going to be talking about cutting the pieces. And we're also going to be talking also going to be going through how to prep the zipper closures and get everything ready so that tomorrow, during tomorrow night's event, which happens at 7 o'clock as well, we will go over how to put pieces of the bag together. So we're going to tomorrow. Hi, Nancy. We're going to be putting pieces of the bag together. And as we put the pieces of the bags together, will, for the most part, complete the exterior part. And then on Sunday, we will complete the rest of the bag. And that will be putting the entire bag together. So for those of you who don't know what the Akoma bag is, it is the February bag. I know we're in March, but it's the February bag that was part of Sew Your Bag box. So in the box, you get everything you need to make a bag, including some goodies. So I'm going to go over the parts of the bag with you tonight so that you get a sense of what pieces we're talking about. And then tomorrow, as I go through each piece, I will show you where it is on the bag. So that'll make it easy for everybody to keep up as to what we're doing and where we are. The pattern is available. So it is on sewyourbag.com under the pattern section. You can find the pattern. And like I said, this is for the people who are on YouTube because I'm trying to broadcast to both my private group and YouTube because some of my subscribers wanted YouTube because it's easier for them to see. And also they want to be able to fast forward through the video to the pieces that they need. So Nancy, I'm so glad you were able to join. I'm just making sure that I have everybody here and I can see the live chat. So if anybody has any questions, I'm not missing any of those. Okay. So the parts of the bag. So the bag itself is a 7-pocket bag, and I'll show it to you laying flat because that may be easier in some regard than, for me to just hold it up and show you. Okay. So hopefully you can hear me. All your pieces here. Yes. If Nancy, I don't think you should have gotten too far off because we talked back and forth. So you helped me with a couple of things in there that I needed corrections on, and I made sure I corrected them and reposted them. So let me know if you can still hear me. I'm going to remove myself and I'm only going to show you my cutting mat. So hopefully you should all be able to see the bag. So I mentioned that the bag is in 7 pieces, has 7 pockets. It is a crossbody bag. So if you can see me, if you can hear me, let me know. I may have cut myself out on my mic when I did this, but I'm hoping you can still hear me. So hopefully you guys can still hear me. So it is a 7-pocket bag. Just reviewing it for the people who haven't seen it before. There is on the front, there is a closure. I'll try to show you. It is a flip closure right here that opens. And this flip closure actually reveals two pockets. One is a zippered closure, and the other one is a slip pocket, which is actually in the back over here. So that's the first two pockets to this bag. It has a zippered closure at the top, and if you open that zippered closure, you will see that there are three pockets here. So there's a back pocket, so this is the back wall. There's a center pocket. There is a front pocket, and this is the one where I showed you the flip closure. But next to the center pocket, there are also two additional pockets. So there's a pocket here, and there's a pocket here. So on either side, there is an additional pocket, which is what gives it 7. So we have 5 in the middle, and then we have 2 in the front. Thank you so much, thank you, Nancy. So in looking at the bag, it does have a crossbody where the straps are catty cornered, so they're not all on one side, and that's to help distribute the weight of the bag. It has a slim profile, so you can see these are the two exterior pockets, and that's the center pocket. What else can I tell you about this bag? We will be learning how to do 3 different types of pockets. So this pocket that's at the top actually has a zipper end attached, and the zipper end was part of the box. So if you don't have a zipper end, you can definitely do a zipper type tab at the end of this. On the inside, the zipper that's in here actually has a zipper tab at the end. So over here, there's a little zipper tab at the end of it. And then the zipper that's in the front part has a different type of zipper tab, and that's these two on the end. So there's one on either side over here, and that's another type. So we're going to learn how to do 3 different types of zippers. All of these are interchangeable, so if you make any bag, you can use the same technique on any bag once you see how it's done. Something else I want to mention is that the bag itself uses a woven interface for most of the bag, but on the front and the back of the bag, we will be using Decoville Light. So we'll be using this material, which is like a leathery material that's fusible on one side, and on the other side it's just smooth. So we're going to be ironing this on to the front and the back of the bag, but it's only the exterior panels only. So it's only going to happen on this side, which is the exterior part of the front, and the exterior part of the back. We will not be fusing it to any of these pieces because we're trying to keep, it is not as bulky as possible for a domestic sewing machine. In addition, the interface itself, for the most part, is cut a little bit smaller. So it's cut based on the seam allowance of 1/4 inch. So it's cut 1/4 inch smaller all the way around. When we do the diagonal corners over here, there will be some interfacing in the corner because of the way that we cut it. But you'll see what I mean as we get to that part. But Decoville Light is used just to give the stability to the front. Something else I want to mention is that the front of the bag itself and the back of the bag, they use Decoville Light, but on the front, we're going to cut out pieces and then apply the Decoville. So don't apply the Decoville yet to any of the pieces unless you follow the directions, but we're going to cut this front into 3 sections. We will apply the Decoville separately because we then have to put seams, and I wanted to keep the seams out of the seam allowance to get rid of the bulk. All right, so if you have any questions, like I said, please feel free to ask. So let's get started. So you're going to need your fabric, and you're going to need interfacing. And in the pattern, there was cutting directions, and there's also a layout chart. So let's talk about the exterior fabric first. So I've given you directions, a cutout chart for the exterior, but I have not given it to you for the lining. The lining is, by the way, that I'm using is waterproof canvas. So this will not require any interfacing. So you do not have to interface waterproof canvas. It has a rubbery background, a rubbery backing on it. And if you iron it, because maybe you want to get out some of the wrinkles, make sure to iron it on what looks like the fabric side of it and not on the rubbery side, because that will stick to your iron. So 1 second, let me just make sure I don't have any questions. I think they come up in 2 different places, and I just want to make sure I don't have any questions and I'm not missing anybody. Okay. So the waterproof canvas pieces are used on the inside pockets for the most part. They're used on the inside pockets in place of cotton. If you decide to make the pattern in cotton, in excuse me. Um, so I'm not sure if you can hear me. That's why I'm pausing a little bit because it seems like I may have lost my sound. So give me 1 second. Okay, can you hear me? Thank you. So hopefully you can hear me. I'm losing connection. For some reason it loses connection. It kicks out my mic. So hopefully you can hear me. Thank you, Nancy. So in the waterproof canvas, I was mentioning that if you decide to not do the lining in a waterproof canvas and instead do it in a cotton, make sure that you buy extra interfacing. Thank you, Arnetta. I'm trying. I'm trying to get the tech under control. It's interesting. Where's everybody seeing me? Is everybody in the Facebook group? It looks like everybody is. I don't seem to have anybody who is on YouTube. So it seems like everybody is in the group because I see a little F next to everybody's name. Okay, so we're going to start. We're going to talk about cutting the exterior of the fabric. One thing I will mention to you is, depending on when you downloaded the pattern, this piece here, I have you cut it. The chart had it in 2 pieces. I corrected it today because the actual list has it as 1 piece because I thought it would be easier to cut it in 1 piece and then just cut it in half, which is what the directions has you do. But if you do it according to the cutout list earlier today, it was actually 2 separate pieces, but it's really the same amount. So nothing really changed. It was just the way it looked. So Nancy's in Facebook. Okay. So when I have you cut out these pieces, what I have you do is I have you lay the fabric out and according to the diagram. So not according to the cutout list, but I have you in the diagram laid out, and I have you cut. Let's say it's front and back. I have you cut front, and I have you cut back. So I have you with it totally laid out. So in that way, there's no confusion to anybody whether or not they have to do something on the fold or whether they're folding it in half. So that's the way it is. If you're a more experienced sewer, then you may know, like, oh, if the 2 pieces are the same, I can actually just fold it in half, and I can just cut 2 pieces like this, and then I'll get 2 of the same pieces. Something else I want to make sure that I mention is that in the directions, when you look at it, you will see that this front piece is actually wider than the corresponding backs. So there's actually 3 pieces that are cut exactly like the back, but this front piece or front main piece is cut bigger, and that's because when we cut it, I had to allow for the seams. So it's not a mistake. That's the way it's supposed to be. Okay? So let's get started. So I'm going to cut a couple of pieces, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do just enough pieces to do what we need to do. Everybody should have in your kit. So in the kit there came a couple of things. So let me just go over that real quick with everybody who received the kit. Make sure you have all the pieces. You should have three zippers, right? So you should have a 6-inch zipper, a 9-inch zipper, and then like a 14-inch zipper. So this one is for the top. If you make the bag again, this piece, it doesn't matter how long. If you only have a 13-inch, you can make it 13-inch or 15-inch, whatever you want. So this is for the top closure. So it does, the length, I just gave a nice tail on it, but it's just for this. So if you only have a zipper that's like a little bit shorter, like, half only here, that's totally fine as well. So that came in the kit. And I'm only going to go over the things that came in the kit that you need for the bag. There was a flip lock closure. So this was the flip lock closure. So everybody should have gotten one of those. You should have gotten some type of, I call it a tri-glide, but it's called a slider, a slide glide, a slide glide. It depends on, where you're getting it from. But that's the piece that will make your strap here. It makes it adjustable, right? So that you can make it as long or as short as you want to make it. And then the other thing you're going to need is a zipper end. So that was the end, the little rose gold end I was showing you. And you are going to need, and this is an oval ring, but if you make the bag again, once again, you can use a D ring or you can use an O ring, right? So it just needs to be some type of ring. So this is a ring that gets attached right here to the front. So that's that ring. There's a ring right in here, right? I didn't, so it depends on whatever you have. So for those of you who did not get the kit and you're doing the pattern, you will get that. There is a screwdriver in there because your zipper end and your flip lock both have screws in them. So there's a zipper in there as well. And then I also included this little tag in there. So if you have a tag, you can add that. If you don't want to add the tag to this project but want to use it for something else, you can keep that tag. All right, so that was all the pieces that are in the kit that you're going to need to make the bag. So let's get cutting. Any questions so far? All right, so I'm going to cut out, because what we're going to go over today is we're going to go over the zippers and how to do those. I will cut out the tabs. I will also, because we're going to be preparing the interfacing everything, I will be cutting out the front. I will not be cutting out tonight the backings or the center pocket pieces. I will leave that to you to cut on your own in preparation for tomorrow. The reason that I'm doing the other prep work is because those are the things that will take a lot of time, and it's also a way for me to show you how to interface the pieces. So what I do to one, you can pretty much do to the rest. All right, so I'm going to cut out the front. And like I said, the front piece is a different measurement than the other pieces. So make sure that you don't, if you cut the other pieces the same way, it doesn't really matter. You can always cut them smaller. At the end of it, you should make sure that all your pieces pretty much measure the same amount. And I'm just, for me, I'm just using 2 rulers so I know where everything falls. I'm going to do mine this way. help if I had my my rotary cutter. You can do this if you wanted to, although I did not put it in the directions. You can do this if you want to do it in cork. I wouldn't. It's going to be kind of difficult to fold all the pieces, but if you wanted to do cork or vinyl, you could definitely give it a try if your machine handle that. I would recommend that you only do the front and the back. And as far as interfacing, you know, it's based on your experience, and you should really, for vinyl or cork, you shouldn't really interface them, but I know some people do interface. Um, I'll answer your question in a second. You don't really want to apply heat. So Nancy, for the zipper tabs, it says to cut 2. Is that for the oval ring tab you're referring to? Or was that for the other tabs? Okay, the O-ring tabs. Okay. So the O-ring tabs. I have you cut 2 pieces of, and I believe you're talking about waterproof canvas, correct? So I have you cut 2 pieces of waterproof canvas, and she's referring to this tab piece right here, the one that is at the bottom. So I'm trying to show you. So she's referring to this piece here. So the reason that I have you cut 2 is because when I constructed the bag, I'm using waterproof canvas for the underside of your strap, and then for the top, I'm using fabric. But when I constructed the bag, I noticed that it needed more stability. So what I have you do is take that extra piece of waterproof canvas and lay it inside so you don't see it, to give you more firmness to your strap. So I have you do it to the strap, but I also have you do it to the tab because it takes a lot of wear. So like if you were to just do this with just fabric, what would happen is, I don't know, it would be a lot more, it would be floppier, but also it takes a lot of wear when you're wearing it over your shoulder. So that's why I used waterproof canvas underneath. So under here, under the tab, this is there. And then what I do is I fold it over like this. But in between this and the fabric is another piece of waterproof canvas. And that's just to make it stiffer. I hope that answers your question. Okay, good question. So this is my my front. I'm trying to just in my head figure out all the pieces I'm going to need to do this. We're going to need the 3 zippers. You're going to need your front piece, and you're going to need your deco. So I'm just going to do this, and then we'll do the zipper pieces. So let's interface this. Correct, and one fabric piece, because the fabric is for the outside, right? So the fabric is just for this piece here, but the waterproof canvas is for the backing, as well as the piece that's encased in there. So it doesn't matter that they're the oval tab, I cut it smaller. It doesn't matter because I don't need, you know, a really big piece, but I wanted to give you enough waterproof canvas that you can actually that, you know, I wanted to make sure that it's when you fold it in half, it doesn't, you don't need all that extra stuff. Yeah. So I had everything cut for the oval ring. I'm looking at the directions now. Everything was cut to the same size. We're going to trim it down. Like if you have the directions, we do trim down that extra piece of waterproof canvas so it lays nicely in there. But I didn't want to say, we'll cut one this size and cut two that size. So I had you cut it the same size. All right, so let me just make sure this is, while I'm doing this, I actually heated up my iron over here. Hopefully it's hot. Yeah. And I'm just laying, what I'm doing is I'm laying my fabric over there so I can get this little tabby thing off without having to take out my ironing board. So I always iron from the wrong side to get this glue hot. And then if you do that, this just peels right off. So there's a little tab on there. And then you would take like a tissue, and there are directions in the booklet on how to do that. I try not to give anybody, I try not to give you any of those pieces that have it. So I have like packs that have the label on it, just so I don't drive people crazy with the removal of the label. So I cut this a little bit longer so I can cut off this edge. All right. So this is going to be my front piece. So we'll talk about this piece first, and then we'll talk about, and all the other pieces that are exterior fabric, we're just going to interface them, except for the back, which we're going to interface, and we're going to put Decoville light on it. So let's cut out that back piece also, as well as this front piece. Let's cut out our back piece. Like I said, if you're comfortable, you can definitely fold this in half and cut two pieces if they're the same size. But I try to make it easy for people. Something I should mention about this fabric, for those of you who have not started, is it's a little bit different than fabric that we've gotten in the past. So when we did the Mamiti tote, market tote, and I'll show you this, it had like a very definite gold in it. So there's like gold like here, and a lot of the pieces have a definite gold. This one is considered like a sand. So there is a right side and a wrong side, and it's hard to show you on the camera, but this is the wrong side and this is the right side. So you can see the shininess of it. So when you're putting your bag together, be careful. And when you put your interface on it, be careful and make sure that you're interfacing the wrong side of your fabric, which it doesn't have. And it's hued around, it's actually shimmery around these pieces here. Make sure that you're adhering it to the side that has a little bit of like gold dust on it. Ask me how I know. Yes, I did. I did that. So let's cut out our back. And remember, I said to you, the back is a different size than the front. So the back and the other pieces are a different size. So let's cut those out. And then the other thing we'll cut out is we'll cut out our zipper, our top zipper. And we'll talk about, preparing that as well. And really try to, you guys have plenty of room. I have a limited amount of space, but weight down everything to try to get it as close as possible. So. How many things I got under here? It's like a little clown car. These things keep coming out from under my fabric. You can always draw these lines and then cut them out later if you want with a scissor. You don't have to use a rotary cutter like I'm using. So it's whatever makes it easier for you to cut your pieces. You can always do that. Okay, so this is the back piece. And I'll show you what I mean by they're different sizes. And the next thing we're going to cut is I'm going to cut that top zipper closure. So I'm going to cut, sorry, this top piece here. And no, I don't have I don't have the measurements in my head. So for those of you who reached out and asked me, I actually have to run up and down the stairs sometimes to get the measurements because I don't remember them off the top of my head. Now the top closure, if you're doing another bag, you don't have to. That's one thing also, like the zipper, I should mention to you. If you have a piece of fabric, I would normally say to you, you can cut this out last because you can leave it off if you want to. But if you wanted to add the zipper and maybe you don't have as much as it calls for, you can make this closure shorter on the right and the left. So you don't have to make it the length that I made it from the pattern. And that's an adjustment that you can make. You just make it shorter to use up the fabric that you have so that you don't have to have that extra fabric if you don't have it, right? So use the fabric on the important pieces. So let's. Okay. And I'm going to cut that out, and I am going to cut one piece of waterproof canvas as well, because the zipper closure itself on the bottom, it's backed with waterproof canvas. So I am going to cut a piece of waterproof canvas as well, even though we won't be interfacing it. I will cut that. What I will say to you is if you want to, you can make this fabric. So you can make this whole thing out of cotton. All right. So if you don't have enough of a particular piece of material, you can, patch it together. You can make the center pocket a different color if you want to. It would probably be very nice if you had a couple of complementing fat quarters. And made it out of, complementing fat quarters would probably be very nice as well. So I'm going to cut a piece of waterproof canvas just to match up against this piece here because it will be my backing. And you do want to cut off the edges of the waterproof canvas if if you've never used it before. I gave everybody in the box an entire length, and I think it's like 54. When you do your straps, you're going to cut them so that they're even. So I gave you a guideline, but you're just going to cut it to it's even because I know that the fabric is 44. And so you're going to have to miter 2 of those pieces to get the piece that you need. But when you're done, just make them all the same. It should be like 50 something. The strap. That's not a mystery. It's about the length of an adjustable strap. You can make it as long as you want. Okay. So I'm just gonna cut this. I'm just cleaning this up a little bit because it's crooked. And then the last thing I will do is I will cut my the decoville for the corresponding pieces so that I can show you. So I'll show you what it looks like for the front. I'll show you what it looks like for the back, because those are the pieces that have the decoville. And all other cotton pieces are going to be just, woven into face. So there is no decoville, except for the flap. But we'll do that's another piece that I have to cut is a flap. I apologize. So these two pieces are going to be for my zipper, my top zipper piece. So I'm just going to clip those together. For some reason, I think this one's bigger than it should be. Yep. I put them together and I could see that one's bigger than the other. So. I'll put those pieces together. The scraps, keep them because, like Nancy asked a question about the tabs, they're good for reinforcing straps or reinforcing the tabs on things. Hi, Cheryl. Yes, you did. Nancy is amazing. Are you across the street from her? You two neighbors? I'll actually be Cheryl, I'll actually be doing this on both YouTube and Facebook for the next 2 days. So I'm trying something new. So I'm gonna look, within our group, it's just, oh, Martha. Okay. Thanks, Nancy. So when I do it in the group, I'm like, all over the place. And I know that, like, in my head, I'm like saying, okay, I sound crazy. But now I really feel like I'm going to sound crazy because now I'm like, what is it, in front of millions of people going live? So hopefully I don't sound too crazy. So let's do the flap. So I've done the front, the back. I've done the top zipper closure. And the last piece that I need to do is the flap. One thing I will mention about the flap to everybody is that, if you're doing this and you're new to this, with the flap, what I have you do is when you sew it, you're only sewing around 3 sides. You're not sewing around all the sides. And you need to leave the top open so that you can turn it right side out. Because you leave that top open, when you install the flap and you're actually attaching it to the bag, what I have you do is I have you take that raw edge, this raw edge, and you're going to lay it. You'll see a raw edge when you start to sew, and you're going to sew your seam along that raw edge. And then what you're going to do is you're going to trim it to the seam line. So you're going to trim it about 1/8 of an inch so that it's almost down to the seam line. Then you're going to fold your flap back down and you're going to use your regular seam allowance. So it covers that raw edge. It gets locked in there. So I didn't want to make it too complicated. It may be complicated. It may be complicated in the directions. And so hopefully you'll see it as we get to it. It'll be clear for you what we did. What I will say to you also is I didn't attach it to the top of the bag or the back of the bag because it would then be in the same allowance and it may be too thick for some of your machines, right? So that's, I just want to let you know that about the flap. So let's cut that flap out. And then I think we'll have all the pieces. So for those of you who want to spend the time matching up and making sure everybody's everything's in line, you can do that. It's really not necessary. It you know, the look of the bag is meant to be kind of like random and not like, you know, perfect in that way. But if you do it another time and you want to make sure that when you close the flap, it lines up with the body of the pocket, you can do that. You can fussy cut that. And I just want to make sure that I got the exterior pocket, not the center pocket that I'm cutting. Oh, the flap. Now the flap, if you cut it a little bit off or it's too big or too small, I have you in the directions, test your lock before you stitch it down. So if you test it before you stitch it down, it'll be okay. So don't stress about it. And then after we cut these, because these are the ones that use the Decoville, we will cut the corresponding Decoville pieces. So this is going to be the flat piece that goes here on the front. All right, so that's going to be the flap. Because the flap also uses a piece of waterproof canvas, we'll cut that out also. And I'm just cutting it. We're not going to use it tonight, but I'm just cutting it so that I have it when we're ready to use it, since I'm cutting the pieces. So, but we will be putting Decoville light on this, which is why I have it. You know, I'm doing it. So I'm going to do it so that you can see it a couple of times. Now the front piece that we cut for that main front pocket, piece that we cut, when we are putting it together, we want to take a look at it, because I in the directions I have you cut it a certain way. But if you forget, don't worry about it. But I'm just going to explain to you why I have you cut it a certain way. So this is going to be for my flap, and I'm just going to put those together and set them to the side. When we look at, so this is the back. One's the back and one's the front. So let me cut this. Sorry, I didn't cut that thing off at the bottom. It's very uneven. You'll see that one piece is smaller than the other. All the other pieces should be the same as the back when it comes to the back pieces. So this piece on the back of the front should be the same size as this piece of the back of the back, and the back piece. Those three pieces should be the same. And I have you cut them all at the same. And they are smaller than this piece. So if I lay this piece, it's hard to see with the print, you can see that it's smaller, right? You can see that one piece is bigger than the other. So this is my back piece, and this is my front piece. So what I'm going to have you do now is I'm going to have you cut up your front piece. Now, when I have you cut it in the directions, I have you cut a certain amount from the right and a certain amount from the left. And that's so that when we put it together, we more or less have a continuous pattern. If you cut it, if I had you cut it like from the right, and then I had you cut it again from the right, it wouldn't be a continuous pattern. And I wanted the middle to be the center pattern, and it wouldn't be even, because that's where I was putting the pocket. So I had you cut it from both ends to the middle. So then what happens is this piece in here would be, it would look like a continuous pattern. When I did mine, I actually made a mistake. So if you look at mine, the pattern is not continuous. Like you can see, this is different But when we put our bag together, if you cut it that way, when you lay the pieces down to sew them, make sure that it's a continuous pattern. It will look more or less like a continuous pattern. It won't be perfect because you have seam allowances in there, but it will look like a continuous pattern. And you may not notice it when you close this, but at the parts that are exposed, you'll see it. So that's why I have you cut it that way in the pattern. All right. So let's cut let's slice this up into 3 pieces. Just making sure I try to go more or less according to the directions. Well, actually, according to the directions. So we're going to cut from the left and from the right. And we're going to slice pieces off. And then I'll go back and I'll cut the deco. So here goes one piece, keeping it right in the middle. We're going to cut the other side. So I hope that made sense to everybody, what I said, why have you do that. And then what I did is make sure that when I cut the zipper, it is the same size as that middle section. So if we look at the small zipper, but I'm having you create the tabs. And the reason I'm having you do that is if for whatever reason you have a zipper and it's a little bit too small. So this actually is the same size as this. But if you have a zipper for whatever reason and your zipper is shorter, like you make the bag again. Yep. And you make the bag again. You can use a shorter zipper in here. I'm having you add tabs, just add tabs, and the tabs act as filler to bring the zipper out to the seam. So if I only had a 4-inch zipper, I could use a 4-inch zipper in here. I don't have to use the same size. But in the kit, I gave you the same size because I didn't want to confuse anybody. But if you make it again, you can use, a shorter zipper. It'll just be a narrower pocket. Okay. All right. So now when I cut this up and I'll put it back together like puzzle pieces, you can see how it's a continuous pattern. When you put it together, if you do it like this, you can see it's not continuous. So just make sure when you're putting it back together that the pieces are. And like I said, it doesn't matter. If you don't drive yourself crazy. Notice I didn't. Nobody's going to notice. It's my own little thing that goes on in my head. And it was because when I did the bag, I messed up the front. So I just remade the front with some of the pieces I already had, and I fixed the other pieces. Okay. So this is how it will go together. I'm just going to stack them a certain way so I know what they are, and I'm going to clip them. So that is going to be your front. So now that we've cut that up, let's cut up our decoville, and and then we can cut our interfacing. Okay. So the decoville I put in a separate chart because I didn't know how to, I didn't want to confuse you in the table layout. So there's a separate table just for the decoville, and we're going to cut that. So we're going to cut two pieces, and the two pieces we're going to cut now are going to be for our front. So the two pieces that I'm getting ready to cut will be for these pieces here. And like I said, I give you the directions. They should be 1/4 of an inch all the way around, shorter than the front, to try to keep it out of the seam. And for me, I'm just going to cut it. So I'm cutting both pieces. And this is one way, if you've made other patterns, this is one way to help reduce the bulk by cutting it out of the seam. And I'll show you what that looks like. All right, so that's for the pieces on the sides of my front. So just to show you what that looks like. Remember I said be careful with this fabric. It's a little bit of shimmer on one side and it's none on the other. So if I were to take this and lay one piece over, I would center it like this. And we're going to do that when we iron. But you can see that all the way around the piece is about 1/4 of an inch, and our seam allowance is 1/4 of an inch. So it helps to keep this out. If you get a little bit in the seam, don't get upset with yourself. Just move on. It's not enough to worry about. Just center it. And the way that we're going to adhere this is we're going to first put down the Decoville light on this piece. And then we're going to come back later on and we're going to put our woven interface on top of the Decoville light. Because there is that gap in the seam, we're going to make sure that we actually seal up these edges and get that woven interfacing locked onto the fabric, and it will help to keep this in place. So you didn't understand why we need 2 cuts of DV for the front back pocket. You only need 1. Did I tell you to, Nancy? Hold on. I'm just pulling up the directions. I'm sorry. Okay, you only need 1, Nancy. I apologize. You only need 1. That was a correction to page 5. So it's only 1 piece for the back. Because we're not into, and the reason what Nancy is asking is in the directions it said to cut 2 pieces of Decoville, but I don't put Decoville on this piece. So you really only need 1. You only need it for the exterior pieces. So you only need 1 for the back. And you should have had enough material to do this. So hopefully you didn't run out of material. So this and this is going to get Decoville light. And so therefore we need another piece for the center, which is this piece here, right? We need a piece of Decoville light for this piece here, which is the center piece, and we'll cut that out. Thanks for that, Nancy. And then I'll cut the back and the flap. I save all of my scrap pieces of Decoville, just so that you know, the same way that I use. Okay, thanks, Nancy, for letting me know. There was plenty. I save these because the same way that I'm using the canvas on the inside of the straps, you can use this on the inside. The other thing is you can use this as a scrap piece behind any, like if you use a magnetic closure, if you use any kind of snap, we're going to use an extra piece on the back of our flip lock when we attach it. So because they don't rip easily, it's a good stabilizer to use for other reasons. So I save this. So I actually have a container over here that I save all my pieces. So this piece here that I just cut is for my center pocket. It's for that. Okay, so now I can clip all of these together. So let's do the flap. Let's do the back. Here. And we don't, I know we cut the zipper, top zipper closure. We don't need Decoville for that. All right, so let's do the flap piece and then let's do the Nancy, you should get your mug. I think by tomorrow it should be there. You and I'm trying to remember, I think Melanie. Can you hear me now, Arnett? When my internet gets spotty, it cuts out my mic on my camera. So it told me that it cut it out. So hopefully you can hear me. Great. So okay. So Nancy's question was, could you put the interfacing on? Thank you, Cheryl. There I am. Could you put the interfacing on after you construct the front? So yes, you can cut the pieces. So you could take your 3 pieces that you have cut. That I put somewhere. Here. Right? You can take these 3 pieces and you can cut them. So there's any number of ways you could do this. Right? So you could take, when you're looking at your bag, you can take your 3 pieces, construct everything. So you can construct the pocket and put everything together. Once it's all together, you could then flip over that piece and put 1 sheet of Decoville light. And then on top of that, put another sheet of another piece of the woven interface on top of that. So yes, you could have done that. And that's another way that you could construct it. I was going to do it that way. I was just trying to figure out what would be the less confusing part of it. And I just thought also this gives you practice on, how to fuse this thing on here, because sometimes it doesn't go on the way it should. But yes, absolutely, you could construct the whole front and then do that. So let's, so Nancy, I hope that was it. Yep, that was your question. Okay. So let's take this. We have the flap. We have, so I want to make sure I got all the Decoville pieces on here. And then the next thing we're going to need is the interfacing. Now I block interface, and I'll show you what I do for that. I block interface, and I'll show you how I do that. So we're going to interface all of these. And then while those are cooling, I will we'll talk about the zippers and how to construct that. And we'll do the top zipper portion. I'll leave the pocket until tomorrow when we construct the exterior of the bag. And we'll also put together the center part of the bag. So we'll put together the center part and we'll construct that external zipper pocket tomorrow. And then on Sunday, we'll just put all the pieces together, and, including adding the strap and everything. Yeah, Nancy, I thought of it before, but I think what happens is I thought people would look at the measurements and go, why is this piece this size and my piece is not that size? And so I thought if I just did it in sections, then it would make sense to. Then maybe I have more experience than maybe some of the other people. So like I said, if I was doing it and I had the pattern and I read through it and I said, oh, well, I can do it this way, I would have, done that. I was trying to make it logical for people so that they could understand what was going on. And it's a different way, but absolutely, I would have done it your way. Or not your way, I would have done it the way that you asked about. There's no right or wrong way for anybody, but I did give everybody a piece of, because I'm not sure if you have it, and I keep talking about how I cover my little ironing board up here that I got from the 99-cent store. It's like the Dollar General or whatever it is. But I cover it in Teflon, and I did include that in the box for everybody in case anybody wanted to try it. Because I always mention that it's always good because then I don't have to worry about things sticking to my ironing board. And it's also easy once it cools. You can take an old credit card, and you can do like this and scrape it off. So this one is, and it's the same sheets that you use for like if you have a heat press machine. So I figure for those of you who have heat press machines, it's also, it'll come in handy and you can give it a try. Once again, make sure that you're putting the glittery side down. All right, the glittery side should be down. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take your Decoville Light, and that's the leathery piece, and you're going to center it on here. Now, you can make center marks, right? So what I do when I make center marks, or how I do it, is I fold things, or lightly fold things in half. I don't give it like a crisp fold, but I fold it in half. And then I give it like about maybe 1/8 of an inch snip. And then I realign at the bottom because things get a little wonky. So make sure you realign it. And then I give it a little snip. And then you would do that on all the sides. And I don't know if I can show you that snip, but it's a little cut out there. And then I would do the same thing to the fabric that I want to center. So I was just double checking I had my glittery side facing down. So you give it a little snip. And I'm just aligning this like this, and I'm going to give it a little snip. And you do it on the top, bottom, left, and right sides, or as many sides as you need. Okay. And then you lay it down. And then what you'll do is you can line up. Now I have a snip here and a snip at the bottom. I would line that up with the snip at the top and the snip at the bottom. You can, if you wanted to really get crazy with it, is you can take your ruler out and you can measure to make sure that it is 1/4 of an inch all the way around the seam allowance. Like I said, it doesn't, don't drive yourself crazy. It doesn't have to be exact. You can eyeball it and get it on there, right? So I can see that it's like this. For Decoville Light and usually most interfacing, what they recommend that you do is you turn your iron onto the cotton setting. You don't use steam. You lay your iron, or you place your iron on top of the Decoville and you let it rest for like 10 or 15 seconds. And then you move it around. I'm crazy, so I actually move it all the way around all the time, but that's not what they recommend. So they recommend that you do this and you hold it for like 10 or 15 seconds. If you want, you can use steam. The reason they don't tell you to use steam is because then it makes this wet and it takes that much longer to dry. So they usually tell you set it aside, or if you have a granite table or granite counter, like I don't have one in my kitchen, but if you have a granite counter, you can lay it on a piece of granite because it's cool and it helps to cool it quicker or faster. So what you want to do is make sure when you're doing this that you adhere, like this isn't adhered. You want to make sure it adheres to all the sides. And I didn't, my iron actually has an auto shut off. So if I leave it sitting up for any length of time, it shuts off. So Nancy says she uses steam. You can use steam. Like I said, I find that it takes longer for it to dry. And it's also very good for like a heat press. Like if you have a heat press, it does it really quick. Or this one I left a little bit too long, got brown. I don't know if you could see that, but it does make that moist if you use steam. I don't use steam. I try not to use steam in here also because when I film, when I use the steam, everything gets foggy, including my glasses. So I try not to use. Now my iron's hot because now it's sticking. And you iron from the wrong side. You can use a pressing cloth to protect your, and I highly recommend to protect your iron. I don't use it for the video so you guys can see what I'm doing. All right, so that's one piece. You can go back if you want to and iron from the front. I don't, so I just iron from the back. Okay, and that's one piece. Remember, this is a shimmery side, so you want to make sure you get the shimmery side. So I'm going to set that to the side. I'm going to repeat those steps. So this is my pocket, my flap. So I'm going to repeat the step for the flap. Like I said, you can cut the center marks. My iron's nice and hot. You usually cut and interface the day before you sew. Okay. So Nancy, how does everybody else do it? Somebody asked me that question, like, how do I, when I sew, what do I do? So the day before you put it together, you cut everything out. Do you cut more than one thing out or you cut several things out? Do you cut batches or you cut just one thing at a time? And how does everybody else do it? Do you cut the day before or do you cut and then sew on the same day? If it's a pattern that I have done before, I will cut batches because I like to make more than one thing. So when I sew, I'm sewing a couple of things at one time. So I cut batches. I don't do that anymore because now I'm doing this. But when I was, cutting things, multiple things, I would cut batches. And then I would sew everything. I also have a steam press, so it made it easier to interface things. Something I mentioned as well is that if you want, you're impatient. Yeah. You're me. I'm impatient too. I like to, if I cut something out, I want to sew it. But like I said, I cut batches of things so then I can sew batches of things. So I would usually cut like either 3 or 5. My batches are like 3s and 5s. But I bless anybody who can actually, I've seen, I know quite a few people when because they're doing production sewing, so they may do zippers, like 20 zippers. That to me, I go, no more zippers, But I get it because you have 20 bags or whatever you need to make. Something else that I want to mention to you is that when you're doing this, you can heat up your fabric. So this has actually gotten very hot now because my iron is hot. I heat up the fabric by ironing it, right? So then that way, I can do like this. And then that way, when I lay the interfacing, and it's any kind, it's hot. And it's almost like the glue starts to stick as soon as I put it down because the fabric's hot. So it starts to stick. So you don't like cutting. Oh, separate days, yeah. I think cutting is like the bane of everybody's existence. Yeah. You only cut one if it's your first time through, yeah. Yeah, once I know that I like the pattern and I've done it before, I will cut multiple if I know that I want to do that. But like you, if I've never done it before, I'm not cutting multiples because then I'll kick myself that I don't really want to do the others. So these are my pieces that are interfaced. And I just need, right? So this is going to be my back with my Decoville light. These two pieces are my front, and this is going to be my flat piece. So I'm going to let those cool, although they do feel kind of cool because I put them on the ironing board. So the next thing I will do, and this is where I do I do fuse ironing, is I get my interface, and I had it here. I get my interface, and I just want to make sure that I have. And then what I will do is on the wrong side as well, I will fuse. I don't cut it. So I don't cut the interface to the size. I explained before that if you wanted to, when you're cutting your pieces, you could lay your interface under your fabric so that when you cut your pieces, you're actually cutting your interface at the same time. So that's another shortcut you can take. You can lay this, you can do this, take your fabric when you're cutting, lay it on top of your interface. And then when you're cutting your fabric, you're also cutting your interface. So you cut it at the same time. So it's less cutting because you only have to cut it once. I block fuse. So what I do is after I have, which is another reason I use a Teflon sheet, after I have, when I'm ready to interface. So this is attached. Like I said, make sure that this is attached on the edges. So make sure it doesn't lift up. If it is, then go back. Mine actually cooled very quickly. Nancy, it'll be interesting to know. I have used steam, but for me, I find it takes longer to dry. And it doesn't, so you have to wait for it to completely dry before you can use it. And when it's wet, whereas if you do it with a dry iron, it's dry. You don't have to wait for that long. But it'll be interesting to see if it takes a while. One versus the other. So, all right, so I'm going to lay that on. It's always going to be the wrong side of the fabric, and it's glue side on top of the fabric. So make sure that you can feel the bumpy, and you'll know almost immediately when you put your iron on it because it'll stick to your iron. All right. So then this one you do the same way. This I do use steam on. I don't know. But this I usually use steam on. I'm not going to use steam because I don't want to fog up the cameras. And you want to make sure you get those edges right there with this, where you have the 1/4 inch seam that's not ironed on. I mean, not where the Decoville light is not. You want to make sure that you get those because that's going to help to lock in your Decoville light. You can do it a different way. You can do the interfacing and then the Decoville light on top. So it's up to you, whichever one works. I cut it out of the seam, so I want to keep it locked in. So I thought this was a better way. And also, in the last bag that we did, Nancy mentioned it, and I thought it was a good way to show you a different way of fusing on the interface. And I may have to use steam on this because it's not, doesn't seem to be sealing. Oh, it is. Okay. Maybe it's my imagination. Patience. Just checking on our people on YouTube if there's anybody out there. Okay. And then so because I'm block fusing it, I'm going to move on to the next piece. And then at the end, I'm going to cut everything out. But you want to make sure, like right here, it didn't catch. But you want to make sure it catches on all the sides. So now I'm going to do the same thing with these pieces, which are my front pieces. You don't have to worry. They don't have to line up yet. I just leave a gap, a little bit of gap between each to make sure I can cut it. And then I take normally I take a smaller piece of interface. I took a piece out of the package, so it's very big. So you take your interface and you just lay it. So I didn't cut anything yet. I just simply, I'm just simply going to lay it on and then fuse these pieces. And I know, some people say, oh, it uses less interface. I don't really know. I don't test it out. I use whatever spare interfacing I have. So it could be that if I have extra, it could be Frankensteined on the back, meaning that I just use pieces of what I have to get till I have a whole piece fused onto the back of interfacing. So I just want to make sure that I'm not overlapping my pieces because I'm going to need to cut them out. And normally I can see that, but yeah, I don't want them to overlap, so then when I'm cutting them, it's a problem. So then I do this. And I'll show you what the steam looks like when I have water in here. I have a little bit of water in here. You'll see steam up. And sometimes I have to step back when I'm filming because of that. But so it should adhere pretty quickly. Like I said, if it doesn't, you just go back on it and do it. There's directions in the first couple of pages in the booklet on how to get that off. The sticker, you mean, Cheryl? Are you referring to the sticker? Did somebody ask that question and I missed it? I'm sorry. Okay, so flip it over. We got those pieces on. I just have my flap, and then I'm going to also do this piece here, which is my zipper closure. So I'll do that as well while I'm interfacing. Oh, Arnett. Okay, so it scrolled for me. All right, so Arnett, let me show you something that I actually saw in one of the groups that Jillian. I normally do this because I have a piece. Hold on. All right, so you're going to get your fabric that has a sticker on it. So this is a fabric. It's got the sticker on it. You're going to get hand towels. I have some here. And they fell. Okay, so you're going to get hand towels and you're going to get your iron. Get your iron hot. I normally do it on the back side. I don't do it on the front side of the fabric. So you should turn the fabric over like this. My sticker is right here, right in this spot. I take my iron and it is in the booklet, and I put my iron and I iron over, and it should be on cotton because this is cotton. I iron over that sticker, just like this. And iron it so it gets nice and hot. Your fabric will get nice and hot. Once it gets hot, if you turn it back to the front, you should be able to, I don't know if you can see, you can peel off the sticker. If it doesn't come off easily, do it again. Because it didn't get hot enough. Like this one's tugging a little bit, and it's because I didn't get it hot enough. All right. So once the sticker comes off, and this is the sticker, I didn't get it hot enough, so there's some glue. You take a piece of tissue, hand towel, right? Lay it on top of the glued part and iron on top of the hand towel. And you can turn this over to the back and do it the same way. I do it on the back because the glue, to me, is on the back of the label. So it's an easier way for me to get to the glue of the label by doing it from the back. So I'm just going to turn this over again. And it should be still on cotton, and you're just going to go over it. You can let it rest a little bit, but you're going to repeat this until all the glue gets transferred to the tissue. And you're going to do that, okay? So then what happens, this doesn't stick. So you may have to fold the tissue and put it on again and everything. So that's how you get the label off. I did see in a group, like I said, that Jillian added me to. If you wanted to, let's say this is a sticker. This is my iron. Let's see if I get my iron in the picture. That's my iron. You can take your fabric, which is what I did earlier. I covered it and I just tapped it. And just watch your fingers. But you can lay it against there and it will start to peel up. See? It starts to peel off. Just be careful not to burn your fingers or your fabric on the back. But it will peel off very easily. All right, so that's another way that you can do it. And then you do the same thing. You can feel it, and you do the same thing with the tissue. But do not, I would highly recommend that you not peel it off. If you want to, and you've already peeled it off, it's okay. You can go back and do the same thing. You'll just have to peel off the little pieces of paper. But it should come off very easily. It shouldn't be that difficult to come off. Let me just turn this piece over. It should not be that difficult to come off. Like I said, I try not to give people the one with the sticker on it, because I think Nancy initially had gotten it, and so now that's the other sticker that I took off. So now all the stickers are off. You know, like I said, you can do it from the front, like this one here. I could do it from the front, but I like to get to the glue, and I also don't want to burn my fabric or mess up my iron by trying to get the sticker off, but it comes off. Okay? Did that help? I hope. Okay. So let's do this piece, and then I also have to do my zipper closure piece. So zipper closure piece does not have any Decoville on it at all, but I'm going to do it because I want to show you how we do the zipper closure, and that's the only reason I'm doing the zipper closure piece, because we're talking about zippers. I hope I didn't lose anybody. Thank you for bringing that up. I didn't see it because my message is scrolled, but thank you, Cheryl. And if you have the booklet, I think it's normally on page, like, I don't know. It's normally on page, I think, 6. Unless I put something there, then it's on the back where the notes are. But most of the time it's on page 6 on how to get that sticker off. Okay. Whoop. See that stuck? And then this is the zipper closure piece at the top that I'm going to do. Once again, just make sure scrap pieces of interface. I'm just going to take a piece of my, not that one. That one was the other type. Yeah. So these are just, when I have pieces, I just fold them up and put them in a, it's actually a plastic box that you put, if you do scrapbooking. I have one for Decoville, one for Decoville Heavy, and one for foam. Although foam I tend to roll, and one for woven interfuse. So it's like a 12 by 12 plastic box that you can get. Thank you, Nancy. That you can get at Michael's or Joann's in the scrapbooking section when it's on sale. So it's just a clear, they come in colors, but mine is just clear 12 by 12 box. Okay. So now those are all of my pieces. I'm going to set my iron to the side. And then I'm just going to cut these out. You can use a rotary cutter and or a scissor, whatever you'd like you can do to cut these pieces out. Like I said, if you cut them at the same time you're cutting your exterior fabrics or your lining fabrics, depending on what you're doing, it works. You only have to cut once. So I'm going to set this aside. And I try to clip everything together. Okay. They're very handy, Nancy. They're handy for a lot of things. I never thought about zippers. I use storage is always very interesting to see what people use, different things. I use for my zippers, I use the IKEA has those cardboardy, they're like boxes for like the office. And they're maybe like this wide. I forget what they put in them normally. It's not like magazines, but they're for an office, and they're cardboard, and they're only like a couple of bucks at IKEA. And I use those for my zippers because I have so many zippers by the yard. And I use it for that. So, but I never thought about using it for the zippers because it's a lot easier to get the plastic bins than to get the stuff from IKEA, because I have to drive like maybe an hour to get to IKEA. So, and the paper bins they're okay, but they're not as sturdy as these plastic ones. So maybe I'll switch out, because when they get heavy, the paper tears, so you have to grab it just the right way. I mean, they're sturdy, but put heavy things in them, they're only but so sturdy. All right. So we're almost done. Then we'll go to the zippers, and I'm just, like I said, I'm just cutting this out. And for the other pieces that we're not doing, it's just interfacing. So there is no Decoville light. It's just the woven interfacing that you're going to use to interface it. And you will just, and I'm repeating myself, but just so that you remember, don't interface the waterproof canvas, just interface the fabric pieces. I do kind of like the way that, because the Decoville is attached this way to separate pieces, they don't seem to separate from the fabric as easily as if I would have done an entire sheet. Like if I did one sheet of Decoville, the manipulation of it doesn't seem to separate as easy, because sometimes it can separate. But definitely that single sheet is a good shortcut, which is what Nancy mentioned. You know, once you've done a couple, you can definitely just do one piece. And what you would do is you would, to figure it out, if you say, well, I just want to do one piece, to figure it out, what you would do with it is you would construct your front completely, get your final measurement, and then just cut a piece of Decoville or whatever the other piece is, and then just cut a half, or your seam allowance, whatever your, double your seam allowance. So mine is 1/4 inch. So twice that would be 1/2 inch. So I would cut a 1/2 inch off of the top and the sides to get my 1/4 inch all the way around. So you just wait till you're done and get your final measurements if you wanted to keep it out of the seam allowance. All right. So I've interfaced everything. You can see that it's sealed in on the back, so we don't have any exposed pieces. Once again, when you put these pieces together, try to remember that they actually form a picture. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. I don't remember how they go, but they form a picture. The front will form a complete picture. So try to remember that. But everything here is done. I'm just going to put this with this. I'm going to do it on these pieces because that way when you get to the other pieces and you interface them yourself. Just as a reminder, there is a diagonal cut on all the corners. And I got glue on the front of this, but there is a diagonal cut. The flat piece is a little bit deeper. The flat piece here is a little deeper than these pieces here. I think they're. Nancy, you asked me this question. It's actually 1 inch. It's 1 inch square, not 2 inches. But that's fine if you cut it at 2 inches. It's just a little bit deeper in here. It'll just come a little bit deeper, but it's 1 inch square and 1 inch square. Maybe I'll cut this one at 2 inches and so you can see the difference. But you can round this, like you could take a container like this and do this and just draw a circle here. So you can do anything you want with those corners. And I think I said that before on something else. So you can do that on all your pieces. We're going to, cut those. So we'll do those before we put everything together. Before we put the bag together as we're putting the pieces together. All right. So those boxes to organize. Okay, so you didn't cut them yet. Good. So it's 1 inch. Just good. All right. So let's talk about zippers now. We did all of that. And we can set those to the side. Let's talk about zippers. So the zippers that we're using, there are 3 sizes. I gave everybody in the kit zipper by the yard. Zipper by the yard, I like better because I don't feel it's as much waste. And I also don't have to worry about the zipper ends, the little metal ends that come on the end of zippers. These zippers are nylon zippers, so they're not metal zippers. What I will say to you is the zipper itself over time, and it's really any zipper, and these are very nice zippers. I've actually tried a few companies. Um, I started out getting the ones from Amazon, and they do have them on Amazon as well, the zipper by the yard, and you can get colors. I would just say to you, be careful about the quality of these zippers, because over time, if you zip and unzip, like a rose gold or a gold finish will then just become like clear, because that metal coloring gets worn off over time. So, just be very conscious of that. Like I said, I still have those zippers, from when I bought them on Amazon. They're perfect for me when I'm, maybe doing a prototype of a bag. Or if you're doing a bag that is not going to get used a lot, right? It's not a bag that somebody's going to use and keep for like 3 years. But these, even after 3 years, because they're not metal zipper, the finish starts to wear off. So that's just something I want to mention. And so I cut them for you. They do not have any end. So if you slide your zipper, you can take that zipper and take it completely off the end. So be careful of that. What I recommend that you do is, if you're somebody who's afraid that that's going to happen, and I wouldn't do it until we're done. But what I would do, because you don't want to have to take it out, if you look at your zipper, there's a flat end here, and then there's a round end that's here. So hopefully you can see that, right? There's a round end and a flat end. So when you look at your zipper, what you want to do is, this is going to be the tail end of your zipper, right? So all of this, we're going to seal up in some way. So what I would say to you is, on the tail end of all your zippers, just run a couple of stitches, about 1/8 of an inch on that edge, so that it's not so easy to slide off the end, right? So you can take all of your zippers, lay them down, and one by one, just take 1/8 of an inch back and forth on the bottom, across where the teeth are. Be very careful with your sewing machine, but by running it back and forth, it actually helps it when you move the zipper up and down. It doesn't slide off the end. It will slide off the front as well. So be careful of that. But the reason I'm not telling you to do it on the top is because we're going to fold over some of these tops. The other thing you can do, which I have done, or which I do sometimes, is I will take a clip and I will stick a clip on the ends of all of my zippers. And the reason I do that is so that as I move it, it's not so easy to come off. It will come off if you force it, but it kind of reminds me, when I get down there, like when I get to the bottom, oh, something's stopping me from pulling it all the way off. Oh, it's too far. And then I can just slide it back up. So I will put clips on the ends of all of my zippers sometimes, to make sure that zipper doesn't, and you can put them on both ends. And then as you're finishing that end using whatever method, you then remove the clip. So whatever makes it easier for you, because if you're not comfortable putting those zippers back on there, it can be a little bit frustrating for you. Quick tip about this. I know some people have like a zipper genie or a thingamajig, or some people use forks or whatever. I do not, and I mentioned that before. I put them on individually. So just to show you the zipper. So the zipper, if you look at any of your zippers that you have that are zippered by the yard, the teeth, when you cut them, there's always one that's higher than the other, right? So on the top here, there's always one that's higher than the other. So what you want to do is be aware of which one is higher, right? And then if your zipper comes off, when your zipper comes off, you can normally see which one's higher, right? So I took the pull off. What you would do is take your zipper, open it up. This side over here is higher, so it's my left. It's not the flat side, but the round side that you put on. Put it on the side that was higher first, right? So I'm putting it on this side because it was higher first. I then take the other side and I stick it in there. And if you look down the top of the zipper, you'll start to see where they're aligning. And when you think that it's aligned, you then just push up from the bottom. So just push up. And once you do that, you have your zipper on. So it's pretty easy to do after you get it a couple of times. And I did that. Normally it's in front of me over here, and I'm doing it over here in front of me, but I did it this way so you all can see what I'm doing. But like I said, one side is always higher than the other. If you can't tell, that's okay. Just put the zipper on and then just cut it even. All right. So, and then it's on, and then you know that it's straight because it doesn't look wonky. But you can always take it off and put it back on. But start with the side that was higher, right? So this side over here, the teeth were on top, and then these teeth didn't start until one level down. So that's how I knew how to start. Yeah. So like I said, I pre-cut these for you. Just go back, and if you're afraid it's gonna come off, put clips on either side or stitch on the side that's not the flat side, not the round side, because we're going to do something with that on a couple of these zippers. So we want to cut zipper tabs. So the zipper tabs I cut out of waterproof canvas. If you cut them out of fabric, you have a couple of choices. You can, if you want to, interface the fabric. I don't. If I were to do it in fabric, I don't interface them at all. Annette said amazing. Listen, I wouldn't tell you to try it, but if you have a zipper there that's not the zipper for this project, give it a try, and you'll start to see there's like a rhythm, and you'll get it. Initially, it may be hard, but after a while, you'll see how easy it is once you realize how to start it. I know some people cut the zipper at an angle so they have a peak on this side. I don't like wasting, so I don't do that. I don't open it up and then cut a peak and do that. I actually do it this way. And like I said, if you get a good zipper, a lot of the companies out there have good zippers. It's very easy. Now I can only tell you it works. That's what I do for nylon. I don't use metal, so I don't know if there's honestly a different technique or a better technique, or it's the same technique. I don't know. I can only tell you for the nylon zippers, that's what I do. So for the zipper tabs, I use the waterproof canvas because I wanted the decorative. If you decide you want to use fabric, you could interface it if you want. I do not interface if I use fabric. So whether I use fabric or I use waterproof canvas, I don't interface. I use waterproof canvas for this bag just to give you a different material, because I know a lot of people who make bags use the fabric. All right, or they may use the vinyl. I'm just giving you another way of doing it. I also wanted to add accent pieces to the bag, so the ends look pretty on the bag and they don't blend into the material. They actually are meant to stand out. So that's why I did that. But you can use the fabric if you want to do this, and the technique is exactly the same. So the zipper tabs that I need to cut is I actually cut 6 of them. Oh, these are almost good. Okay. So I cut 6 of them, and I'm just going to make this, not worrying about it. And they're square, right? And it just made it easier. I think it's because my ruler was. And I also wanted to make sure that you had a good amount to work with. I didn't want anybody to feel like they were fiddly, that any part of this was fiddly. Okay, so I'll show you what we do with them. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take, let's start with the smaller zipper. Okay, I'm going to take the smaller zipper. I'll just cut this. I don't really need a piece this big, but what I'm going to do, and I'll show you, is you're going to take your zipper. You're going to take one of your pieces that you cut. We're going to need 2, so we're going to need 1 for each end. Your zipper, and we're going to need 2 of these. We're going to do what's called a zipper sandwich. So what I want to do is when I don't know if I can show you in here in the bag. It may be kind of hard. Okay, it's gonna be hard to show you in the bag. But what I do is I want to create the zipper in such a way that the zipper is between these 2 pieces. In order to do that, if I lay this down and then I lay the zipper on top of it, so they're both right sides up. When I lay the next piece, this piece, right side down, when I flip it over, the right sides are showing. And that's what'll happen. So this is right side, this is right side, and then I lay another piece on here, which is wrong side up. So right side up, wrong side up. On this smaller piece, because I'm doing it on both ends, I don't have to worry about which way my zipper is opening and closing, because I'm putting it on both ends. When we do the next zipper, you'll have to worry about it, and I'll explain it. So the first thing you're going to do is take one of your tabs and you're going to lay it on here. I actually clip it in place and I baste. I tend to baste a lot, so I will baste and then come back in and sew, especially when I'm using multiple layers or something that have to be connected. And the reason I do that is so that I make sure I don't have any slippage while I'm sewing. So I'm going to baste across this piece here using a 1/8 inch seam allowance and the longest stitch on your sewing machine. My longest stitch is 6 mm. So I'm going to use that. You can use the longest stitch. We just want to make sure that you're basting it in. So let's take a look and see what that looks like. So hopefully I should have sound. Okay, hopefully you guys can hear me now. So I'm trying to get the sound up. So I'm going to stay on the screen. Hopefully you can hear me. So I'm going to baste this in on the sewing machine. For me, the 1/8 of an inch, and you'll start to know your own sewing machine. Your 1/8 of an inch is the inside of your presser foot. So if I put the presser foot down, my inside right here is the 1/8 of an inch. So if I use that as my guide to sew this, baste this in, and I make it the longest length, I can sew across. And the reason I use 1/8 of an inch, and I went backwards and forwards, the reason I use 1/8 of an inch is because the 1/8 of an inch will be inside of my seam allowance. So by using 1/8 of an inch, you're not going to see it when I do the next part. Okay. And I think I'll just leave everything open so I don't lose my sound. Okay. So now what'll happen is, just need to make sure one of my mics are on. Good. I've stitched that on there. So it was right sides together and it's stitched on that 1/8. I'm going to take this other piece and I'm going to lay this piece right side up. So this, I'm sorry, wrong side up. So it's right sides together here. I'm going to clip those in place. If you can hold it, that's fine too. And now I'm going to use a regular seam allowance of 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to turn my stitch length down to a 3 for this part of it. My 1/4 of an inch for this is going to be the outside of my presser foot. So I'm just going to move this thread out of the way. So I just slide it right underneath the presser foot. And the outside over here is my 1/4 of an inch. If I was stitching it with the other way, it would be the outside over here. So that's my That's my 1/4 inch. I'm just going to lower my needle to help me start. And then I'm going to stitch forward a couple of stitches. I'm going to back stitch a couple of stitches. I'm going to go forward again. And then I back stitch again. And then I'm going to cut my thread. If you don't have a thread cutter, you just lift it and pull it, and it'll cut and then you can cut it manually, cut your thread. So now what'll happen is if I look at it, I've stitched it at 1/4 inch. If I flip this open, and I'm just going to finger press it as hard as I can. And I do the same with the other side and finger press it as hard as I can. Okay. You will see that you have it encased with a sandwich, right? So you can imagine that it's 2 slices of bread and the zipper is actually in there, right? So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch across this at 1/8 of an inch. And that's to top stitch it. My top stitching is between a 4 and a 5. Okay. My dragging doesn't seem to want to work today. So, right. And I'm going to turn this to a 4 and I'm going to stitch. All right. Just make sure you press it, so it's a nice crease. I use my fingernail. You can use, if you have a bone folder, the back end of your scissor. If you have a pair of scissors not good, you can use the side of it where the blade is. Whatever it is, just try to make it as crisp as possible. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to, like I said, top stitch this at 1/8 of an inch. And remember, I said the 1/8 of an inch was inside of my press, on the inside of my presser foot. And I do back tack a little bit, not a lot, because I don't want to see double stitches, but I do back tack a lot. I mean, a little bit. And then I cut my thread. And then if I go back, I'll show you what it looks like. All right. So once I've done that, you then have your top stitching. And on the back side, the reason I do it this way, so I know it's on the inside of the pocket. And most people go, well, you're not going to see it because on the inside of the pocket. I just like to have it finished. And so when you do it this way, you'll see that the front and the back are both finished. All right. I did leave gray in my bobbin thread. Nobody is going to see that, but you will see that it is finished. If you use this technique on a different, for a different pocket that's longer, and you're making compensation, in other words, your zipper may be short, but by adding this, it helps to make it the length of the width of what you want to do. Then when you do that, you will see when you open it, you could potentially see the back. So you don't want to see an unfinished, an unfinished zipper. So once you've done that, then what you're going to do is you want to cut the excess off. So you want to cut it flush to the zipper. And I don't worry about the length so much because I'm going to cut that off when I attach it. So I don't worry about the length. I just, want to cut this piece so it's flush to the zipper. All right. So that's one side. So now I'm going to do the other side exactly the same way, right? So I'm just going to take my fabric tab, lay one right side up, put this on top. So they're both right side up. Clip them in place. Go back to the sewing machine. I'm going to stitch at 1/8 of an inch going across. I won't switch the screen, but it'll be 1/8 of an inch. At a setting which is the longest stitch length, right? Because we're just basting it in. We're not doing a finish. We're not finishing it out. We're just basting it in. Okay. And then once I've done that piece, this piece of it, get rid of some of these threads. By the way, I know some people who they actually burn the zipper. I don't do that. It for me it curls in a weird way that I don't like. But I know some people who actually burn, to help it to seal it so the zipper doesn't come off. And now what you're going to do is you're going to take this. They're both right sides up. You're going to take your other piece, put it wrong side up so that you have the sandwich. You're going to clip it again like that. And I will take you to the sewing machine with me for this final one. If it wants to cooperate, it may not want to cooperate. And then we're going to stitch this down. So I'll do both things at the same time. I'll do the stitching to put it together, and then I'll do the top stitching. So 1/4 of an inch, change your machine to a 3, stitch it across. And I do back stitch like I mentioned before. Cut your thread. And because I'm going to stay here, I'm going to show you, hopefully you'll be able to see. I just fold the little tabs. I just want to get rid of some of these extra threads here. I fold the little tabs back and I finger press them. Just, press them as hard as you can. Line them up. I clip so they don't shift on me, but you don't have to if you got this under control. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a top stitch on here, and I'm going to use 1/8 of an inch top stitch. I change my stitch length to between a 4 and a 4.5 for my top stitching. You'll get to know what you like. It should be a wider stitch, but whatever you like, depending on your machine, a 5, maybe even a top stitch. I just would not do it a small stitch. So don't do it like a 2 or a 2.5 or a 3. Okay. And then that one is done. And that's going to be for our center pocket. So the center pocket on the front, not the center pocket of the bag. So there's a difference. So let's talk about the other zipper. So we're going to cut this. Like I said, I don't worry about I don't worry about the extra stuff on the ends, like how long it is. We'll deal with that when we add it to our bag. But just to show you what this goes on, this is going to be our centerpiece, our center of our bag, right? Because these were the two sides. Sorry about that. These were the two sides. And when we put our pocket, and you're going to cut out your pocket pieces, this is going to lay here. So that's what it's going to do. And I do have extra, but I'll trim it when I go to do my pocket. But that's what's going to happen. So you won't see this extra in here. It'll be like this on the pocket itself. So we cut out your pocket pieces, interface them. I didn't do that because the pockets don't have deco bill. Okay, so that's what it's going to look like. All right. So we can set this to the side, and we can take our neck zipper. So the neck zipper is going to be the 9-inch zipper. The 9-inch zipper, we're going to do the tab on this end a little bit differently. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our zipper tab piece, and I actually put center marks. So I fold it in half, and then I snip little center marks here. And what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to fold it in on itself like that. So I'm folding one end to the middle and one end to the middle like that. And then I'm going to take my zipper and I'm going to slide it in there. But what I'm going to do to make that happen, and the reason I put the center marks, is so that you can see where to line this up when you do that, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is take my piece, and you can make this small. If you don't want it that big, you can make it smaller. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my piece and I'm going to take this piece with my zipper right side up, the end that's the flat end. So this end over here, right? Not the end where it closes, because if I do this, it closes. If I do that, it opens. The end with the flat piece. I'm going to take my zipper tab. I'm going to turn it over and I'm going to lay it right side down or wrong side up. Okay, on top of my zipper. I fold things to the back. I know some people fold to the front. I fold to the back. So what I'm going to do is clip that in place. I'm going to clip this in place. And I'm going to stitch it on using an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'm going to base stitch it. Once again, the zipper is right side up. This is wrong side up on top of the zipper. You're matching those edges. And you want to make sure that when you're doing this, that it's an 1/8 of an inch, because we're going to come back later on and we're going to sew it in. So I'm just going to go to the sewing machine and sew that real quick. If you want to see what I'm doing, I can show you, but it's going to be real quick. So I promise you. All right. Now this is why I created the notch. So now what I'm going to do is if I turn my zipper to the wrong side, that's the wrong side of my zipper, right? When I fold this piece here, I want to fold it so that notch, right? This is the right side. That notch, you should see the edge right here of the, I'll try to show you closer, right? When I fold this over, it's right side up. You'll be able to see this little notch that I made over here, and you should be able to see this back piece, like almost like bisecting it right there. So you know that it's in the center, right? Then you're going to fold it. You're going to flip it over. I'm just going to add a clip just so I can show you. And then what I'm going to do is take the other side, the piece that's not folded, and I'm going to fold it to meet the top raw edge of that zipper. So I'm folding it like this. Right? So now what happens is they're both folded to the middle, right? Because this folded up, but this will stay because I stitched it. That's why I stitched it. And then what you're going to do is take it and fold it in half again. So what you're doing is you're creating an enclosed zipper tab at the end of your zipper. I hope that makes sense. It's an enclosed zipper tab. What I do, and I mentioned this in the direction, is when I look at it, I try to push it in such a way that I have about 1/8 of an inch peeking out on either side. And you can do that. Just roll it and do it. And that's because when I make my 1/8 of an inch stitch to do my top stitching, I ensure that I grab the back. If you do it just flush, if you make these two flush with each other, what happens sometimes is when you stitch the 1/8 of an inch, you don't grab the back. So I'm just going to clip that. And I don't know if I can show you if it's clear enough. But right here, there's an 1/8 of an inch peeking out. So when I do the 1/8 of an inch, I guarantee that I'm going to grab that back. Now, nobody's going to see that 1/8 of an inch that's sticking out, because once we cut this flush, you don't see it. You're not going to see it. So I'm going to go and I'm going to top stitch across here at 1/8 of an inch and lock it in place. So like I said, I didn't want it to be fiddly, so I tried to make these pieces as big as possible for you guys, so it's not fiddly. Okay. Turning my stitch length up, if it's not already there, to between a 4 and a 4.5. I'm going to grab the edge of that. Like I said, the edge for me is right on the inside here. I'm going to lower my needle and I'm just going to stitch that And I back tack maybe once or twice, just once, twice, and then I go forward. And I do the same when I get to the other end, the opposite end. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is, once I cut my thread, I'm just going to trim this so it's flush. So in doing this, we've sort of created a different tab. A different zipper tab. So these are two different ways you can create a zipper tab depending on the bag that you're constructing. So this one, because this is going to get sealed in, it's all open. This one, because I'm going to be able to see it, I'm going to be able to see it at the back end of my bag here. I needed to make sure that I finished off this extra thread. I finished off this outer side. So this is the way that I encase the outer side. You can make it shorter. So I could have made it 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches or 2 by 2. Whatever size you want to make it, you can adjust this the way that you want for the project that you're working on. Right. So for this one, I made it big, like I said, because I don't want people to, it was a folding portion of it, and I don't want it to be fiddly for people. Okay. So I'm just cutting off the extra pieces on either side. And then that's what your zipper will look like. So that's finished, right? Front and back. And then when we put it into our center, it'll fold over like this, and it'll be a nice finished edge. So the other piece that we have to work on is this piece, right? So that was the piece that was curved, right? So the flat end is when you open it, it stops it from flying off the end. The other piece we have to work on is this piece here. So when we do this, and we're going to do the same for the top zipper closure. When we do this, what's going to happen is I want to fold this or round this end here, and it's easy to show you on the closure. I want to round it. So what I'm going to do is tuck the raw edge into between the exterior and the lining fabric. It gets tucked in, but first we have to round it or curve it. So I'm not going to do the center pocket. I'll do that tomorrow. But what I will do is show you how you curve that in preparation for doing the center. And then we'll construct the top zipper part, and you'll see how it comes together. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to lay your zipper, your 9-inch zipper, on the cutting mat. And we're going to measure in from that end. So that's the curved end. If your end is flat, you need to take out this back end because you put it on the wrong side. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a mark, and I'll make a mark just to show you. And I just want to make sure I'm telling you guys exactly as the directions are written. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a mark, and we're going to fold it. So I'm going to grab my little ruler here. Make sure the mark that you make is erasable, because just in case you can see it, you don't want to see it. So make sure it's erasable. It's a type of erasable ink or chalk. And then I'm going to measure this in, and I'm going to make a mark. So I use my ruler and I measure and I make a mark. And while I'm here, I'm going to do the same on the other side. So I'm going to make a mark on the other side as well. So this is a heat erasable mark pen. So I don't know if you can see that, but I made a mark here and I made a mark there. So I'm going to do this on the sewing machine. You're more than welcome to back tack it or stitch it by hand. I'm going to do it on the sewing machine. So what I do is I open up my zipper where the marks are. Where this mark is, I put my thumb on that mark, and I rotate the zipper in such a way that I crease this mark. It may be easier for you to bend the zipper down and pinch it. So if you want to pinch it, you can pinch that mark and then take that mark and match it up to the top of your zipper. right? So I'm rotating it and I'm matching it up like that. What I normally do is I don't put a mark, but normally what I will do is I will rotate this just like that until the zipper end is flush over here. But I had you make a mark just to give you a guide so you know what to do. You will have some overage and you can clip that off when we're done. All right. So hold on, I'm just going to do that again. And I'm just going to clip this in place. You can use a pin. Like I said, you can back tack it with a needle and thread, just like with a couple of stitches in there by hand. You don't have to do it on the sewing machine. All right, so that's one end, and you can see it's folded. I'm going to do the same with the other end. So I'm just going to take that mark. Like I said, you can pinch it between your fingers and then just fold this other end down. If that makes it easier for you, you can create a crease, however you want to do it. Okay. And then I'm just going to clip it in place. So then that's how it looks on both sides. They're curved. And it's 90 degrees. So it's about 90 degrees. If I zip my zipper up, then what happens is it actually stops where that curve is. That was the purpose of it, to stop where the curve is and make it look pretty. Okay. So now I'm going to go to the sewing machine and I'm going to stitch about 1/8 of an inch. Just tack those things down so that when I get ready to put it into my center pocket tomorrow, it's finished. So we're going to do this again, but I just wanted to show you that. So let's go to the sewing machine because I want to explain to you also what I do to keep it down because it is a little bit fiddly. I'm just checking on my peeps on Facebook if there's anybody. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is to make sure that when I take out this clip, right, this clip here, to make sure it doesn't come apart, what I do is I put it in here and I put the needle down first. So the needle actually holds it in place. Then what I do is I can remove the clip and I know that it's not going to shift, and then I can drop my presser foot. So that's what I do. Even though this is I'm tacking it in and it's kind of like a basting stitch, I use a regular stitch length of 3 because I want it to really stay in there. I go forward and then I go back and then I go forward. So I actually go past the zipper teeth and I do that at 1/8 of an inch. And I'll show you. So now when I've done this, and I don't know if you can see it, I've tacked that right down. But the key is to put the needle down first before you remove the clip or the pin. If you use the pin, that's the key. Just make sure you put the needle down first and then remove it because the needle actually will hold it in place. So I'm going to do the same to this side. And also you can't put the presser foot down. See, I'm trying to put it down, it's pushing it. But the needle will hold the layers in place so that you can remove this clip or pin. And then I go forward and then I go back. And I only go forward about 1 stitch because I want to come back mostly. And then I go forward and then I cut my thread. Okay. So now once I've done that and I have both of those in place, what will happen is I'm going to set this zipper aside because this is going to come together when we do the center pocket tomorrow. You'll see how it fits in. So we haven't cut the center. I'm going to leave the center pieces and the other pieces that need to be cut to you guys for tomorrow. So I'm trying to get the cutting mat over here. It's not cooperating. Okay. So this is how it will look. I'm just going to trim the threads. I'm going to use my Not Good scissors. And I'm going to trim this. You know, if you need to trim the zipper so it's flush. And that's because we're going to line things up over here. Tomorrow we're going to line this up with the pocket. But now if you slide that zipper pull up or down, it's not going anywhere. It's locked right in there. All right. So now if I look at my zipper pull, it's locked in at the bottom. And if I slide it up, it's locked in at the top. You've been struggling with the zipper ends for a while. You're welcome, Cheryl. You're welcome. Yeah, sometimes if somebody, like, different people explain differently. So sometimes somebody will explain it. And all those other things that people say come back and you're going, oh, now I get it. Now I understand what's going on. And guess what? We get to do this all over again. So we have this long zipper, which is our last zipper that we're going to work on. And we're going to actually complete the top zipper closure for this, right? Because I want to show you how to do that. And then that would be the last thing that we'll do for tonight. It'll give everybody an opportunity to catch up and prep for tomorrow. So this one, remember I said that when it's on the flat side, you want to sort of like seal it off. So I'm going to run some stitches across the bottom here to make sure my zipper pull doesn't come off. I know it's not going to, but I'm just going to run it on there anyway, because I don't want to have to worry about that as I'm doing this. So at 1/8 of an inch, and I won't bring you to bore you by bringing you over here, but at 1/8 of an inch, I'm just going to run some stitches across those zipper teeth, so it's not so easy for the zipper to pull off. Okay, so that's all I was doing over there. It was very quick. So now I can deal with the top of the zipper. So the same way that we did the fold over for this zipper, we're going to do the fold over for this zipper. The same exact way. So we have to make our marks. So if you lay it right side up, we're going to fold it from the front. So we right side up and we make our little marks on our zipper tape. Once again, it should be the curved side. So the curved side, that end. So that's the end we should be doing, not the flat side. The flat side is the end of our zipper. I do not put on the zipper end until I'm done because I don't want it to get scratched up. Charles said exactly. So now what we're going to do is we're going to open this up. I just put my thumb and my index finger on that line and I just really rotate it, right? I just push and rotate it until it lines up. And it's a 90-degree angle with the end of that. So I'm telling you to do it this way and give you extra, as you start doing this method more and more, you'll see what I mean by the fact that you can line up the side of the zipper with the raw edge over here. So then that way you don't have to cut anything off. But I gave it to you in such a way that you can see what you're doing. So you can pinch it here, rotate this down until it matches the underside of those zipper teeth. And that's 90 degrees. I'm going to add a clip here to hold those layers together. It's about 3 layers. I'm going to add a clip to hold them together. If I can get my fingers out of the way. My big fingers out of the way. Actually, it's my big nails out of the way. It's not my fingers, it's my nails. Just like that, 90 degrees. And then we can do the same thing. We can even pull it down. So if you put your thumb here, you can even pull it down if you want. But you'll figure out whatever your rhythm is, you'll figure it out. And it'll be 90 degrees. So your rhythm will be your rhythm. This is just a guide. And then I'm going to take my clip and I'm going to add it on there. Once again, you can use a pin if you want. You can use it if you have pins. Like I said, I don't have pins necessarily readily available. But then you'll have those 2 pieces folded over just like that. And make sure it's opposite the curved end. I mean, you can take it out, but it'll be, it's a pain to have to rip something out. So I'm going to go to the sewing machine and I'm going to stitch these down again at 1/8 of an inch. I love the way my tech is cooperating tonight. I don't want to jinx it, but it's being very cooperative. So I think it needs to, I need to recognize that so it doesn't feel like I'm not appreciative. I may have spoken too soon. Hold on. I know, Nancy. I said it and I can't drag the screen. There it goes. So I said I jinxed it. So I'm going to put this in here. Remember I said put the needle down first to hold down those because it's 3 layers and it's easy to shift. Hold on to it, remove your clip, and then drop your presser foot. I do go forward like a stitch, and then I go backwards right away. Something else I want to mention that I do, it was at 1/8 of an inch. I should have said that. Something else that I do is I don't, like some people will turn, you could turn it this way and do it coming towards, like in the direction of the teeth. So I could sew it this way as well. I personally don't do that because I found when I do that, I tend to shift these teeth out of alignment. So they tend to go up. So by coming from the top and coming down and then doing one stitch and then going back, I find that it helps for me to keep this alignment where it needs to be. Other than that, when I try to do it the other way, these teeth shift up. So I always come from the top down. That's just for me. If you've never done it before, give it a try, experiment, see if you have the same experience. That's just my experience. All right. So put your needle down. Don't put it on your finger. I actually had the clip in the wrong place. So, and I sew it. If you don't mind, if you want to do it, you can do it at 1/4 of an inch. Just increase your stitch length because you may see the stitches and you want to remove those stitches. You want to take those stitches out so you don't see them. So if you do a 1/4 of an inch, do it as a basting stitch, not a regular stitch. All right, so now I'm going to cut that. So now we're going to do the top placard piece. So I'm going to cut or trim off this piece and stay with me on this this part of it. You'll see it seems weird, but it'll make sense as you go through it. And I'm just going to cut off these extra, I have these little overhang pieces. I'm just going to cut those off. That's all I'm doing. So now what we're going to do is we need to make, remember we talked about those sandwiches? We're going to make another sandwich here. So just let me cut off these and then get some of these threads out of the way. All right. The first thing we're going to need to do is we're going to grab these pieces here. So depending on when you printed the pattern, they may either be 2 pieces, it may be 1 piece, but we need to end up with 2 pieces. We need, in looking at the bag, we need to have a piece for this side and a piece for that side. So like I said, I changed the pattern today where it was just 1 piece, but if you printed it beforehand, you'll see 2 separate pieces. So now what happens is I have to cut this in half because you need 1 for one side, 1 for the other side. So if you have 4 pieces, you're good. If you don't, you have to cut them in half. So I'm just going to cut these in half. It also made it easier to fuse the interfacing to the back of this because then it was 1 piece as opposed to 2 smaller pieces. So that's the other reason I did it. So I'm going to cut this in half. So this is my underside. And then I'm going to cut this in half. And this will be my top. Now, one thing about the when you cut it in half, just like the front sections where I said, you want to try to keep the pattern so it looks like it's continuous and it's pretty. You want to do the same thing here, right? Because this actually, right, is a complete picture. So when you put in your zipper in between these 2 pieces, you want to have kind of sort of that complete picture. So that's just something to keep in mind. If you don't get it, once again, don't drive yourself crazy and wonky about it. It's just something that, when you do it, you're like, wow, it looks really nice. But if you don't do it, go, wow, it looks really nice because you made it. So what I want to do is I want to actually seal this in so that it's in this piece. So it'll be between, right? There'll be a front and a back, and then this will be on the underside, right? So it'll be that with this, right? So it'll be the lining, and then that'll be on top of it. So that's really what I want to do, right? I want to seal it in. It will look like, and I had another piece here. Here it is. When we're done, it will look like this, right? So this is a completed piece with one side. So what I did is I sealed it in so that when you open your bag on the other side, you don't see the raw edges. You can see here where that curve is sticking in there, right? So it gives a nice finished edge. And when I open it, it's a nice, size. What we're going to do is, in order so that this side looks finished, we're going to need to fold our lining piece and our exterior piece under. And we're gonna fold it under on the wrong side. And I think I have in the pattern 1/4 inch. So to do that, we're gonna need to make some marks. We're gonna need to make a mark at the top here, to know where we're gonna place our zipper. And we're gonna need to make a mark at the tail end here to know how to fold it. If you have double-sided tape or a glue stick, this is very helpful in this process. If you don't, that's okay. You just have to make sure you clip it or pin it well. By the way, waterproof canvas is hard to pin through. So you want to make sure that your pins are sharp if that's what you're going to use. So with that in mind, let's start the marking, and we'll start the first side. So what we're going to do is we're going to take, because we've prepared our zipper, we need our pieces, right? So our waterproof canvas and the 2 pieces that are our exterior pieces. We need to make the 2 marks. So the first mark that we're going to make is going to be for our fold. When making the fold for the waterproof canvas, it doesn't matter which end you're going to do. When making the fold for the fabric pieces, you want to make sure that fold for the fabric pieces gives you a complete picture, if that's what you want to accomplish, right? So if I look at my pieces here, and this makes a complete picture, if I want that to be the end that I fold, I have to make sure that I do it on both of these pieces so that it makes a complete picture. You don't want to do it like fold this end like that and you don't have a complete picture. All right. Up to you. If it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. But pick a side that you want it. And if you're trying to get that complete picture look, make sure that that's where you fold it. So I'm going to turn mine around. I'm going to do my folds over here. And what I want to do is I want to make a mark if I flip these over. So the easiest way to do this so you don't get messed up is flip one to the right and flip the other one to the left. And it's still a complete picture because when I flip them back, it's a complete picture. So one to the right, one to the left. Take your ruler. And I had my little ruler here somewhere. Okay. So I'm going to take my ruler, and on each of these pieces, because this is going to be my bottom, I'm going to make a 1/2 inch mark because I want a 1/4 inch fold over. So I double the amount that I want it to be folded by, and then I draw a line. So if I want it to be folded by a 1/4 inch, I say 1/4 times 2 is a 1/2 inch, and that's the line I need to draw. Because when I fold it down, it will give me a 1.5, and I'll show you. So I made a 1/2 inch here, and I'm going to draw another 1/2 inch here. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold the raw edge to meet, and I'll show you. I drew my line. I don't know if you can see it. It's kind of bright. Right here, I'm going to fold this raw edge to meet that line that I drew. And that should give me a 1/4 inch fold, right? I say how much of a fold do I want, and I double it. So that's a 1/4 inch fold, right? And we can iron that in place. And I'll do that in a minute. I do the same thing here. I fold it over just like this. And it gives me a 1/4 inch fold. So let me iron this real quick so that you can see what I'm doing. Now for the waterproof canvas, you can't really iron it. So you're just going to have to push as hard as you can. Or like I said, if you have a glue stick or double-sided tape, you can use that. So I'm just going to try to get my iron hot. Cooled off a little bit. And while I'm waiting for that, I'm going to make my 1/2 inch mark on my waterproof canvas. But I have to wait for this to heat up a little bit. And I'll make my 1/2 inch mark on here. And I'll show you. Okay. So I made it on there. It's like auto cuts off. And then here you would fold it. The waterproof canvas, you would do the same thing. You fold it to the line. And then you would press it. You can either use the back of a scissor, or you can use your fingernail. However you want to do it, you can fold it. If you have a glue stick, you can use that. I'm going to grab some double-sided tape here. And I'm going to use 1/8 inch double-sided tape. If you have 1/4, you can use 1/4. So I just add a piece here and here. Oops, it's getting hot. All right, and I'm just going to peel this back and I'm going to fold that over. I'm going to press. Now this, this tape is a low tack, so it doesn't necessarily stay. So I will do that, and then I will just add a clip and put those to the side. And then we'll iron these other pieces. Now there may be some adjustments needed as we sew, but we'll talk about that as we go. Because depending on your presser foot, your pressure may push your fabric, so it ends up out of alignment. But we'll talk about that. It's manageable, and we can do it. So I'm going to fold this to the line, and then I'm going to iron it down. Okay, so that's all that I'm doing is I'm ironing. And you can see I use that marker that when I apply heat to it, or that pen when I apply heat to it, it disappears. And keep your fingers out of the way, especially if you're using steam. Okay. So we've marked the tails or the bottoms of our pieces. The next thing we need to do is we need to mark the top of our pieces. So the top of the pieces that we're going to mark is so that we know where to lay our zipper on here. Okay. So according to the directions, you're going to look at it and you're going to make a mark on your zipper. And I make the mark, when I'm making the mark, I just want to make sure that I have my pieces right. So I want that to go like right in there. And I make the mark where I can actually see it, right? So the thing is, when you flip this over, let's say this is right side up, when you flip this over, you need to be able to see where the mark is on your fabric, because you need to line the zipper up with that mark, right? And then we're going to take this piece and we're going to lay it like that, right? So that's the easiest way to know, right? Because once I lay this in here and I do it like this. If you put it on the back, you can't see what's underneath it. So put it on the front part where you can see the actual mark of where you're going to lay it. All right. So this is my complete picture. This is how I want my zipper to be. I want my zipper like this, right? So I want this edge to be here. So it lines up like that, right? And so in order to make that happen, I'm going to make my mark, and I'll show you. Right side up, complete picture. When I attach it, I want to attach this to this front and that to that front. So I'm pushing one of these out of the way. I'll deal with one. I'm going to flip this over to my left. My tail end is at the bottom here, and I'm going to make the mark on my fabric. So the mark that we need to make to know where to align the zipper, right? So I make a mark, and if you want to, you can make an entire line. So if you want to make a line that you can see, you can draw it from end to end so you have it on both sides. I'm just going to make it for right now on this edge. And then I'm going to just make it on this edge. So I'm not going to make an entire line. I'm just going to make but you can draw an entire line. All right. Always double check. So I double check it to make sure that, it's a complete picture. Flip it over. So now what I want to do is I want to line up this curved edge that I have here, that top edge, with this mark. So I'm going to align it like this, right? So I can see it. Just like that. And you can clip or pin this in place, right? So you can clip this all the way down and clip or pin it in place. So when I flip it over, it's going to be like that. So that's why I said if you mark it on the front. But I was showing you how you can see what you're doing. So then what happens is when I fold this open, I know that this is on the top. So the right side of this should always face the right side of the zipper. Always. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to run, you would clip or pin it in place. I'm just going to run a piece of double-sided tape on there so that I don't have to worry about the clips or the pins. If you don't have double-sided tape, it's actually a really nice tool, because one thing that I have also found that it does is it helps to keep the fabric or the zipper smooth. So sometimes when you put pins or clips, if this is wavy, when you sew it, it stays wavy. Whereas I find when I use a double-sided tape or a glue stick, what happens is it helps it to eliminate that waviness. So you don't get that wavy zipper because it's holding it, there's no movement, right? The double-sided tape is holding it firm against the zipper. So I'm just going to peel this off. Sometimes it doesn't want to cooperate. There we go. Okay, so when you peel it back, it's shiny. There's a shininess to the tape, so you know it's on there. Once again, I look at it. I do it like this, double check, get my other piece. Yep, I'm good. Line up that mark that you were supposed to make, right side up on your zipper with the round part pointing towards the top, right? The tail is the end, the square part is the end. I'm going to line up the very edge of this teeth with that line. So it should be to this side of the line, but right on it. And then I'm just going to, because I'm using double-sided tape, I'm just going to press it down. You're going to pin or clip it so that the edge of the zipper is with the raw edge of the fabric. I'm going to baste it in because I based everything. What's nice about this zipper is you can move that zipper pull completely out of the way. And you don't get the wavy, right? Because normally what happens is as you sew, when you get to the zipper, you should pull the zipper pull out of the way so that you can straighten this out so it's a smooth finish. So I'm going to stitch this using 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, and I'm going to baste it in. So I'm going to go back to the sewing machine and do that. Okay. So it's up to you if you want to do it right side up, upside down, it doesn't matter. I'm doing it from the wrong side so I can see it. 1/8 of an inch. I'm starting at the blue line. It doesn't really matter, but I am starting at the blue line. I'm going to put my needle in the down position and I'm going to stitch forward and backward. Make sure you change your stitch length to the longest stitch length. And the only reason I back stitch even with this is to make sure that it doesn't, because it can separate, and go to 1/8 of an inch and sew. Now, when you get to that folded end, you want to make sure that it remains folded. That's important. And you're not gonna sew off of the folded end. You're gonna sew just till you catch it. So probably like right in the middle of that folded end, because I don't want to see the stitches. I just want to catch that fold, and then I go back. Okay. And so now what happens is I have this piece basted in. When I fold it over, I'm just double checking that the right side of the fabric is the right side of my zipper because it's supposed to be. So now what we're going to do is we need to add the back part of that zipper. We can see the back part of that zipper. So I don't know who that was. It was weird. So I just, hopefully they're not offended, but I blocked them. If you hear my cat, she's on the other side of the window meowing because she wants to come out here. So I'm going to take this piece and I need to add the backing to it, but I want to make sure that the folded edges down here line up, right? So what you're going to do is take your backing piece, you're going to lay it. So this is wrong side up, the zipper. You're going to lay this down on top, wrong side up or right side down, however you want to view it. And you're going to align those folded edges. So it's very important to align the folded edges. And you can clip those in place. All right, so you're going to align these edges, the folded edges, you can clip them in place. This is how we're making the zipper sandwich because the zipper actually is inside between our lining and our exterior fabric. So for me, I'm going to put a piece of double-sided tape here. If you don't have double-sided tape, you can pin it or clip it. But at this point, really, this being basted in is going to help you so much. Like, it's a little extra step to baste it in, but that way you know that everything is totally aligned. If you do the zipper sandwich, and if you've never done this before, there are times that you don't catch that zipper because it shifts on you. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to right side up, the zipper is wrong side down, and I'm going to put the right side of this against the right side of this fabric, so it's right sides together, and I'm going to match up those ends. So what I want to do when I do this, and if you look at it, I gave you enough room because we're going to have to stitch down this side as well. So we're going to stitch across the bottom and down this side. So we're going to stitch an L. Do not stitch this fold. We're going to do that after we're done. Just stitch an L straight across the long edge and down the short edge. Match up your folded edges. And this is where I said you may have shifting, but don't worry about it because we're going to, if it shifts, it's going to shift at this end and we have that. We'll make it work. And I'm just going to press this down in place. I will add a clip, just one. I don't really need to, but I will. Okay. And what you can do in here is you can pull, and I'm just going to separate out my zipper. You don't have to, but I separate it because I don't need that piece. And it's just less to worry about. You don't have to worry about it, but it gets it out of the way. Okay. So once again, we're going to sew across that zipper and we're going to sew down the side. Because of where I had you make the mark, it should just butt up against your seam allowance. We're going to use a stitch length of 3 for this. And we're going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So we're going to put it in permanently. So whenever we do that, we put it in permanently. Trying to see if I can get it to cooperate. There we go. So I'm going to start at the folded edge. So I'm starting down here because that's where I want to lock it in. Remember I said to you that we want to not go over. So we don't want to go over because I don't want to see the thread on the tape. So I'm starting at about like, I don't know, somewhere between the end and the fold, the raw edge of the fold. So I'm starting somewhere in there. I'm doing a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way down. And I'm setting my stitch length to 3. So I do back tack. And I find for me that 1/4 inch, the edge of my presser foot on this side actually rests against the zipper. So it helps to keep the line straight. You can use a zipper foot. I know somebody will ask me that. Yes, you can absolutely use a zipper foot if you would like. And then when I get to the end and I can feel the bump in the zipper, about a 1/4 inch, I'm just going to back tack a little bit and then I'm going to stop. Lift your presser foot with your needle in the down position. So leave your needle down, rotate it. I have a little bit over here, so it's more than a 1/4 inch. So I'm going to turn my stitch length down to maybe like a 2 to take a shorter stitch. Test it out. Yep, I like that better. Turn it back up to a 3. And then I'm going to complete this side. Okay. So now I've done that. I've created the little pivot here. On the other side, I'll show you what I sometimes do is I'll stitch all the way across here. And then I'll come back and then I'll stitch this. So I'll do that on the other side to show you a different way of doing this. So now what we're going to do is go back and we're going to do a little bit of trimming and turning this right side out. So to make it, sit nicer in there when you do this, I'm going to get my scissors. Okay. I'm going to cut, and just be very careful when you do this, not to cut the stitches. I'm going to cut close to this peak here. And that's why when you go across, it makes it easier because you can see like an angular cut. And I'm going to take an angular cut. So I don't do an 1/8. I do like a little bit more than an 1/8. And then I trim this just a slight bit. So I trim off like maybe an 1/8. And then what I do is I turn this right side out. Right? So I just take this little pocket. I stick my index finger here and my thumb right into the corner. And I push down on my index finger and I turn it. And I push up. I give a slight tug to that zipper. And you can see how it makes a little corner there. All right. And then I just roll it in my fingers to roll that lining down. And then what I do is I match up that folded edge. Remember I said don't sew the folded edge. So I match it up. And I put it down. Now you can iron this because you're not ironing on the waterproof canvas, so you can iron it. Just keep in mind when you iron it, the waterproof canvas does get warm, so don't iron it, like don't leave the iron on it. It gets warm and it gets soft. As you can see, I am, pushing down hard, and I clip the top. So I don't iron it, I just push it, finger press it, push down hard. And sorry, it's dog walking time. And that's what happened. So in looking at the way it looks, you should have, and it will be a little bit extra on the end because of the way it's sewn. So it's not totally flush with this. There's a little bit of peak up there, which, that's intentional. That's intentional. And when we sew this, we're now going to sew this particular folded side first. I like to start there first. I'm going to sew down on the fold. So make sure everything like lines up. Make sure, like, for example, when I look at the back, I don't see, like, this isn't meeting the way that I want it to. So I'm going to pull it. It's going to be 1/8 of an inch. So you want to try to make sure you have it totally where it needs to be. If you need to stick double-sided tape or, turn it to the back and stitch, whatever you need to do to make sure it lines. If you want, you can do 1/4 of an inch top stitching. You can do 1/4 of an inch if you want. I do 1/8 of an inch. And we're going to sew down this side at 1/8 of an inch. When we get to the corner, we're going to pivot. We're going to cross the bottom and go up. What you can do, and what I like to do, is also stitch across the top so that I make sure I get both of these pieces stitched together. So when I sew it to the bag, I know that I'm not going to lose, or the lining piece is not going to slip in any way, and I'm grabbing both pieces. So I'm going to start at the folded edge, making sure that I get all the, this fold. If you find that it's not lining up, you can open this up. So it's just taped, it's not, or glued or whatever. You can open it up and nudge it a little bit to fold it a little bit bigger, like that, and then see if it lines up better. But you can adjust it. That's what I was saying. If it doesn't line up because of, pushing a fabric or whatever, it's totally fine. Okay. And then like I said, I just clip everything in place. I start at the folded edge. So I start at the top of the folded edge. I back tack. When I get to this bottom, I will pivot with the needle in the down position, sew across, pivot here, up, and sew across. One thing I also want to mention is when you get to this corner, if your corner is round and if you can't get it square, it's totally fine. Change the stitch to a smaller stitch and rotate, and either hand crank or do it one stitch at a time and rotate your fabric. Just try to make sure whatever you did at this corner on this side, you do the same thing on the other side. So if you took it down to a stitch length of 2 in this corner to get a smooth transition, do the same thing on the other side. And it's easier too if you count your stitches. It's going to be more or less, it can come across as more or less rounded. So you can get, you can say, okay, I'm going to get to the end and then do a 45-degree angle and then turn it straight again when I go back up the side. So whatever works for you. I do take my time around here and try to get it as square as possible. Believe me, nobody's sitting there and gonna, look at it. But 1/8 of an inch, if you have trouble with the 1/8 of an inch top stitching, you can use 1/4 of an inch top stitching. Just keep in mind at this side here, if you use the 1/4 of an inch, you won't catch the, you may not catch the fold, because remember the fold is at 1/4 of an inch. So you may want to do something between the two. Okay, so let's go to the sewing machine and walk through that. Okay, I inherited a cat. My cat actually came out. Okay. I'm turning my stitch length to a 4. To a 4. putting my needle down, and then I'm going to stitch to this opposite corner. I will back tack. When I get to this corner, leave your needle down. If you have to hand crank it, then hand crank it so it is down. Lift the presser foot, rotate it 90 degrees, drop your presser foot, and continue sewing along that long edge. Take your time. Try not to stop. So even if you go off, just keep going, get back on track. For the most part, your machine will continue on in a straight line and you won't even notice that. So now I'm getting to the end. So if I find that I'm not going to be able, if I rotate this and I said, oh, it's more like 1/4 of an inch, I can drop it down and I only want 1/8 of an inch. I can rotate down one level. And remember I said, whatever you do on this side, make sure you do it on the other side. I get to the 1/8 of an inch that I want, lift my presser foot, change my stitch length back to what it was. In my case, it was a 4. It's fine, you can leave her. And then stitch across at 1/8 of an inch. I do back tack here. And then I will stitch across the top just to, and I use 1/8 of an inch as well, because I don't want to have to rip out stitches at the end. And I just want to make sure that the back and the front stay together. Okay, so now we'll take a look at that. See how I did? Didn't do too bad. And let me show you what it looks like. Okay, so now when I'm done, this is what it looks like. All right, if I close my zip, I'll cut off some of those threads. You can see that's what it looks like. So that's 1/2. I'm going to do it again just to show you what it looks like on the other half. And if I didn't mess myself up, I should have a complete picture. So now you can see this is the other half of my swirl. You can see that? So you lay the zipper, the pull is to the top. That's where, you know, when I pull it down, it's to the top. I then take this piece, which has a folded end. I flip it to the right. And I have to make my mark at the top like I did before. So I'm going to make that mark. Sorry, there's strange things happening here. Well, actually, it's dog walking time, and so that's the door that you hear. So I'm going to make my mark on both edges. Just like this. Okay. And then once again, double check. I'm going to flip this because it's even this way. Where my mark is. Oh, my daughter's coming home. Sorry, I think my daughter's coming home. That's what's happening. Thought it was dog walking, but I think my daughter's coming in. I'm going to mark this. I'm just double checking because I think I made a mistake in the measurement of this piece because I can see this line, but I can't. This line is a little bit off. Okay. Right. So I flip it. I line up that mark. And you'll, like I said, you'll notice that when you do this, when your needle comes through here, it actually doesn't hit the teeth because of where that mark is. So I'm going to add a piece of double-sided tape to my zipper. You can add it to the fabric if you want. I'm just going to add it to the zipper. I know where the fold is, so I'll just add it here. I don't add it to the front and the back because if you add it to the front and the back, when you stitch it the first time, it's going to stitch the glue on the other side. So I do them separately in case somebody wants to know why I didn't do that. So peel that back. Match my mark with the edge. Remember I said the edge of this should be to the there should only be like that gap that we measured on this side to the right of it. And then I'm just going to stick it down here. I hope I get it right. No, I'm going to get it right. Like I said, you can run a piece of, if you have a glue stick, a child's glue stick, you just needed to hold it, even if it's just temporarily, just hold it. And then what I try to do is make sure that my fold at the end, my fold down here at this end matches up nicely, right? So you want to make sure that if this is not matching up, that you fold it in such a way that it does. The other thing you can do, because you have plenty of fabric over here and you've already done one side, is you can match the fold and then just lay it down, because we trim it off anyway. So you can match these folded edges and then just lay this down. Just like that. Right, so it's the same thing. It's just that we're making sure that the fold over here lines up. Okay, so then what you're going to do is you're going to take that, we're going to base stitch it in like we did before, using the longest stitch length on our sewing machine. And we're going to do it at 1/8 of an inch just to hold it in there temporarily. All right, so I'll do that real quick. I won't switch out the cameras, but I'll do that real quick at the sewing machine. So I'm changing mine to a 6, which is my biggest stitch length, and I'm base stitching. Remember, when you're on that fold, don't go over the fold onto the zipper, because you do not want to see the stitches on the zipper. So you should go only about maybe 1/8 of an inch into that zipper fold. And like I said, I do back tack, so. So the next thing we have to do is put our lining piece on. So I just basted that in, right? And the next thing we have to do is put this lining piece on that we did before. So I'm going to flip this to the wrong side. So it's the wrong side of the zipper. I'm going to move this. Remember I said I opened this out of the way just so you can see it better. Okay. I need to lay this on here, and you want to make sure that you line up those folds. So now I can lay another piece of tape here. You can clip it or pin it in place if you don't have tape or a glue stick. Okay. In the directions, I say that the tape is optional. We lay it down. Right side up. Your zipper will look like it's wrong side up, right? So it's right side, wrong side. And then we're going to take our waterproof canvas and lay that right side down or wrong side up. We want to line up our folded edges. So we want to make sure those folded edges are lined up nicely. And I'm just going to clip those in place. And then I'm going to line up the rest of my zipper, this long edge, against my zipper edge and the exterior fabric that I just sewed down. And then I'm going to finger press that right down. Once again, you would add clips, or you could use pins. The pins, like I mentioned before, for the waterproof canvas, they're hard for them to go through. So you may want to use the clips. All right. I'm now going to stitch this on, or stitch this together, using a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. I will show you what I'm doing. And we're going to use that L, right? So we're going to stitch in that L shape that I mentioned earlier. So now what we're going to do is I started this open end, not the folded end. The folded end, remember, we don't sew it all. I started this end, and I'm going to stitch down to the corner and across. I'll show you what I mean before, when I mentioned that I go to the end. I'll show you what I mean. So I turn my stitch length to a normal stitch length of 3. and I'm sewing with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I'm going to stitch, back stitch. I'm sewing all the way to the end. And then I go back about a 1/4 inch and then I pivot. So that's what I meant when I sewed to the end. And then when I come forward at a 1/4 inch, I also go back to the end. So I back stitch all the way to the end and come forward. And then I'll show you what that looks like. And then you just stitch across with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. When you get to that fold, remember I said do not stitch past the fold. You're going to stitch about 1/8 of an inch or about a single stitch just to hold down that fold. And then you're going to back stitch. Right? So now if I show you, over in this corner, I have a line that goes this way and a line that goes that way. So what happens is when I get ready to cut it, I'm going to cut a diagonal line there. All right. So I have a line that's a crosshatch there. So when I look at it, I can then use those as markers and just cut my line like that. And I know, that it's locked in really well. Okay. So let's go back and do the other trimming on this. Turn it inside out. Or right side out, I should say, not inside out. Right side out. So I'm just going to trim this a little bit. I'm going to trim this to about 1/8. Don't trim it too much, but trim it to about 1/8 or trim off about 1/8. I already squared up that corner, so I'm sorry, cut it at diagonal. This side here is open, so that should not have been sewn. I put my thumb in, my index finger on the outside, and then I push down and pull to get that out. All right, and you can poke it. Try not to poke it too much, but you can poke it, and it should come out nicely. Then flip everything else to the right side as well. And I actually tug on that zipper just a little bit, gently tug, just to be able to get this crisp fold in here. So I just tug on it just a little bit. I will zip this up. See how it didn't come off of the end because I stitched it before, so it didn't come off. I'm just going to zip this up just to be able to lay it flat. All right. And then I roll it, but I actually push towards the top to help roll it flat. Okay. You press, you turn it over to the back, pull down to press, finger press it. Like I said, you can iron it. I don't, but you can. I add some clips. Make sure that you get that fold on the tail end of it. So line those up as well. Clip the top. So I'm going to clip the top of this just like that. Okay. And now we can sew this. Again, we can top stitch. Like I mentioned, I start stitching over here at the top of my folded edge, just to make sure it's neat over here. I go down, I go across. Because on mine, I actually reduced the stitch length by 1 stitch over here. I'm going to remember that I did that, and I'm going to do that over here as well. I'm going to pivot when I get to this corner, come up to the opposite corner, and then stitch across to lock these 2 pieces together. All right, so let's go back to the sewing machine and do that. Okay. So starting at that folded edge, Actually, I don't want to stitch on the wrong side, so I'll start on the opposite edge because I don't want to stitch on the wrong side. I want to stitch on the top. This is a top stitching 1/8 of an inch. So you want to change your stitch length to 4. I'm actually starting at the opposite end because I don't want to stitch on the wrong side. So I'm going to start on the right side. And I'm starting where the zipper is. So I'm going to stitch forward. I'm going to back tack, and then I'm going to go. Take your time here. If this is something that, you know, is relatively new to you, you can take the zipper and zip it open. Sorry about that. Wobbly camera. You can zip it open to get it out of the way. Remember I said when I got to my corner, I reduced the stitch to make sure that it was 1/8 of an inch, so I can see it's a little bit over. So I reduced it down, and I took a stitch, and then I went back up. Okay, and then I'm just gonna go along. Something else you can do to help keep this flat is as you sew, I take my index finger and I just sort of like gently tug this in that direction and let it stitch. So by pulling it it helps to keep it straight. And it also helps me to make sure that I stitch that line straight. And the reason I didn't start on the other side is because I have gray thread, bobbin thread. And if I turned it and started over here, I'd have gray bobbin thread on the top. So that's why I didn't do it that way. All right, I'm just going to take out 1/2 a stitch or something over here in the corner. Okay. When I get to the corner, I'm going to leave the needle down, pivot, and then stitch up to the top. And then rotate again and do 1/8 of an inch at the top to seal it up. Like I said, so that you don't see those stitches when you attach it to the bag. You don't have to rip them out. You don't have any extra stitches showing. Okay. So now, how did we do? Let's take a look. We should have both of the ends on, both of the pieces on for our zipper. And I'm just going to show you what that looks like. Okay. So this is how it should look. Take your time. It's actually, if you've never done this before, it's not as difficult as it may appear. Just take your time with it. Ask questions in the group if you need help. Ask questions. You can see also, because I looked at it and I said I wanted my pattern to be complete. When you look at it, the zipper is actually a good color because it kind of complements it. But my swirls actually come. So I didn't have to fussy cut. I didn't do anything miraculous here, right? I don't care that it's not perfect, but you can see that the swirl comes. So if you lay your zipper down, take your exterior fabric, lay them side by side, right side up, and then just flip one over, you know where to sew this, right? Because when you flip it over, that edge should fit the edge of your zipper. So then it makes one complete, swirl. Like I said, I don't put the zipper end on until I'm done because I don't want it to get like scratched up in the process of me making the bag. And that's the last thing that I put on. So we've done this. This will be for the top zipper closure. We've done this, which will be for the center pocket, which we will do tomorrow. We'll put this on our center pocket. We've done this piece, which will be on our exterior pocket. We've created the 3 different pieces for the front, right? So we're going to add our center pocket to this. We've done our flap because all of these pieces have that piece of Decoville light. And we've done the exterior. So all of these pieces are done. Tomorrow, what we're going to work on is that front pocket. So putting that front zipper pocket together, adding the first part of our flip lock on there, and also adding the flap that goes over, adding this flap that goes over this piece. We will also put together the center pocket tomorrow. On Sunday, we will put everything together. So we'll add the straps, the strap in. We will complete the front and the back of the bag. And then tomorrow, I guess we'll talk about how to create the strap. The strap is very, very easy. I'll do the tab part, which is the easiest part to do. I'll show you how to do that. Then you can take away the entire strap piece. That's a lot of sewing, so you can take that away. And then Sunday, I'll show you how to put the tri-glide on before we actually put everything together. Okay, so I think you guys did very well tonight. I think you asked very good questions. All the questions that you ask, as much as they are for yourself, they are for other people also sewing this bag. So I'm really grateful that you asked questions. I do have, based on information or based on a question Nancy asked, I do have one change to make in the pattern. It's really just one piece that you need of Decoville Light for the back. So it's nothing, you didn't cut anything wrong if you cut an extra piece or anything like that. I just have to change that it's one piece instead of two. Thank you guys so much for joining me tonight. Tomorrow night and Sunday, it will be at the same time. It will be at 7 p.m. And that will give the people on the East Coast an opportunity to join us if they would like to, real time. And I wish everybody a wonderful evening. Talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.